Mars is the Earth's space cousin. It's the fourth planet in our solar system, about half the size of the Earth. It also has two small moon buddies, Phobos and Deimos. These moons are shaped like potatoes. Phobos is the drama king, moving closer to Mars and planning a crash landing in about 50 million years. Deimos is much calmer though, hanging out farther away from Mars. Mars got a cool nickname, the Red Planet, thanks to its rusty red surface. This color was so bright that it was spotted by astronomers many years ago. Even you can sometimes see it in the sky with the naked eye, a small scarlet dot. And maybe it has hot vibes, but in reality, Mars is a very cold desert. The temperatures there can drop as low as minus 240 degrees Fahrenheit. But was Mars always nothing more than a rusty-looking desert? Actually, no. Scientists believe that perhaps many years ago, this planet was similar to ours. Meet Curiosity, the detective rover made by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Scientists want to know all about the Martian weather, landscape, and other stuff like that. Curiosity is a pretty heavy car-sized robot. It weighs about 1,985 pounds. It embarked on its journey on November 26, 2011. The rover pulled off a landing on Mars on August 6, 2012. Originally, Curiosity's mission was supposed to last for 2 years, but it's still going strong. Curiosity is basically a space lab on wheels. It's packed with cameras, spectrometers, radiation detectors, and sensors to sniff out the Martian environment. As Curiosity roams around, it rewinds Mars history. And during its mission, the rover discovered something incredible: signs of lakes and rivers from long ago. You see, Curiosity's favorite spot to play around is Gale Crater. It's a prehistoric Martian oasis where water might have hung out. There's this huge mountain in the middle called Mount Sharp. This place is taller than 10 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. And it's got layers of rocks that hold Mars's ancient secrets. Recently, scientists spotted something great when studying Curiosity's data: mud tracks. What's so surprising about that? Well, these aren't just any old tracks. They're like messages from the past. They mean that the Martian ground used to get wet and then dry out again. The mud on the ground would shrink and crack during the drying phases, making these T-shaped junctions. Moreover, it seems like the ground on Mars went through several wet-dry cycles. It happened maybe up to 10 times. This made the junctions turn into Y-shaped cracks. When a bunch of Y-shaped cracks got together, they made a super cool pattern, something like a patchwork of hexagons. It looked just like honeycombs, or even a dragon's skin. Each of these hexagons are the size of candy. Similar cycles have happened on Earth, and they're linked to the birth of life. When water dries up, it leaves behind concentrated stuff that's great for chemical reactions, and these reactions might be the same ones that kickstart life. These hexagons have been hanging around for a really long time, billions of years. That means that Mars once had a climate kind of like Earth's, and maybe even life. In fact, the Red Planet even has some signs of water right now, in the form of hidden ice at the poles. Mars has the North and South poles, and just like with the Earth, they're Red Planet's ice caps. Picture the North Cap as a big, icy pancake about 620 miles wide. The South Cap is a bit smaller, about 220 miles wide, but it's got a thicker ice layer, almost like a snowball with a strong shell. When it's winter at the poles, it's an incredibly long nighttime. No sunlight, just chilly darkness. During that time, around 30% of the air turns into frozen CO2. It's dry ice, the same stuff that's often used in horror movies. But when the poles wake up to sunlight, the dry ice turns back into gas. All this freezing and thawing makes clouds and frost, just like on Earth. One time, a rover named Opportunity even caught some clouds made of water ice. But it doesn't necessarily mean Mars was once thriving just like the Earth. Life needs more than just wet, dry cycles to pop up. It needs the right atmosphere and other special ingredients. We're not sure if Mars had all of those, and even if it did, there's no guarantee that life actually happened. But this raises another very important question. has Mars ever hosted tiny living creatures? Curiosity isn't the only robot that tries to find the answer to that. There's also a rover called Perseverance. It's trying to find clues about Martian life. It's digging into an old Martian crater once filled with water. And like a space archaeologist, Perseverance is searching for fossilized signs of ancient critters. And here's the funny thing. Some scientists think that we've stumbled upon it almost half a century ago. The only problem is, we might have accidentally destroyed it. It happened even before Curiosity started rolling around Mars. Back in the 1980s, two cool NASA's landers, Viking 1 and Viking 2, made a pit stop on the red planet. These landers took a selfie, and then they also did some funky experiments on the Martian soil, all in the name of finding signs of life. What they found is some weird organic stuff called perchlorate. It's a compound that we use in fireworks or rocket fuel. But most results didn't seem that promising. They even mixed up some soil with water and nutrients, hoping that if there were Martian microbes, they'd snack on the goodies and return radioactive gas as a result. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Now, here's the problem. Some scientists think that maybe the water they added back then actually destroyed those tiny Martian critters. Poor microbes were just hanging out and suddenly got soaked by a bunch of weird liquid. Something like this wouldn't be very pleasant for the Earth microbes. They live inside rocks and they're sucking water from the air. Pouring water on them would result in a total disaster. So, of course, giving them nutrients after that wouldn't do anything. If you've just barely survived a water bath, you're probably not in the mood for a feast. Perhaps these Martian buddies might have something called hydrogen peroxide in their cells. It helps them live in an extreme environment. If that's true, it could explain all the results from the experiments. You see, the instruments heated up the samples, so if there was hydrogen peroxide, it would have gone boom, wiping off the little guys and turning their cozy homes instantly. Imagine how ridiculous it would be if it turns out that we accidentally destroyed the only signs of life on Mars. Ideally, we need a new mission to Mars to test this theory. Let's hope it's not true. In any case, the journey isn't over. There are more missions planned for Mars, and humans might even visit this planet someday. The next mission is the Mars Sample Return. It's a super cool teamwork project between NASA and ESA. They're teaming up to bring back souvenirs from Mars, collected by NASA's trusty Mars Perseverance rover. There's going to be a whole bunch of spaceships. They'll work together to bring these precious Mars samples back. The samples are planned to arrive on Earth in the early to mid-2030s. And the fun doesn't stop at Mars. Our Mars missions are a warm-up for an even bigger adventure, exploring icy moons around Saturn and Jupiter. These moons have hidden oceans beneath their icy surfaces, and who knows what kinds of space secrets they're hiding. But whether it's Mars, icy moons, or beyond, our quest to find extraterrestrial life continues. In addition, we are slowly starting to find more and more organic materials on Mars, and maybe one day we'll finally find some microbes in our solar system. Let's hope for it and stay tuned.
Well, it's official. There is life on Mars. No, it's not a clickbait. Let me break it down for you. Most people imagine extraterrestrial life as little green and, preferably, intelligent people. But we need to distinguish between life and intelligence. When someone tells you there's life on another planet, you probably immediately think about some smart being you can converse with. But life is something different. It's often associated with organic. And NASA's Curiosity rover has found the biggest organic molecules ever seen on the red planet. They were hiding in super old Martian rocks, and I mean about 3.7 billion years old. These kinds of molecules can be leftovers from stuff like fatty acids, which help build cell membranes. It may not be the life we're used to thinking of, but at the very least, the ingredients for what we call life have been there. So, NASA's Curiosity rover has been cruising around a huge crater on Mars called Gale Crater. Scientists think this crater used to be a lake several billion years ago. The rover's main job is to find out if Mars ever had the right conditions for life. And one day, Curiosity drilled into a chunk of ancient mudstone in a spot called Cumberland. It collected some rock powder, and scientists ran a special test on it using a tricked-out oven built into the rover. That oven gets really hot, about 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. Luckily, the experiment's conditions allowed the researchers to cook off molecular oxygen, which limited the risk of combustion. And they found something surprising: chains of carbon atoms, up to 12 atoms long. You can find similar chains on Earth in everything from crude oil to, here we come again, living things. You may say that so far, the discovery doesn't sound too earth-shattering. But wait! Yep, these molecules can form naturally through non-living processes, like reactions with water, heat, and minerals. Hydrogen, carbon monoxide, heat, minerals, well, that's enough to cook up these molecules, even without biology. At the same time, such molecules are also common byproducts of life. Here on Earth, we produce similar compounds all the time, especially as carboxylic acids, which are everywhere in living organisms. So, even though these chains might have formed naturally, they could also be leftovers from something once alive. Maybe microbial life, maybe something way more complex. We just don't know yet. But the most unusual and intriguing thing about the molecules is that these carbon chains are pretty fragile. On Earth, sunlight, air, and water would break them down over time. Yet, they're still on Mars after billions of years. So, even if these molecules don't belong to Martian dinosaurs, we now know that the red planet is good at preserving organic stuff. And this is huge for the search for ancient life. There's a good chance that chemical traces of that life might still be hiding in the rocks, and apparently, Curiosity is capable of detecting them. Now, by the way, this is not the first time Curiosity has found organics. It's also picked up chlorinated organics, sulfur-containing stuff, and nitrates, basically ingredients that, if life ever brewed on Mars, would have been part of the recipe. Now, how about we talk about another hero sent to Mars to make incredible discoveries? Meet Perseverance. It's a car-sized robot NASA once sent far away from home to the inhospitable and dry red planet. In particular, to an ancient crater called Jezero. The Jet Propulsion Lab created Perseverance and prepared it for its first space journey, which started on July 30, 2020. For 7 dark, lonely months, the robot was traveling through the cosmos. Luckily, it managed to land on Mars safely on February 18, 2021. NASA even gave its landing spot a cool name, Octavia E. Butler Landing, after the famous science fiction writer. Since then, Perseverance has been busy exploring the red planet. As of April 8, 2025, it's been active for 1,469 Martian days, which are, by the way, called sols. That's about 1,510 Earth days, or a little over 4 years. The rover looks a lot like its older sibling, Curiosity, but it boasts some upgrades. It's literally loaded with tech: 7 scientific instruments, 19 cameras, and even 2 microphones to record sounds from Mars, like the wind or the crunch of the rover's wheels over rocks. Perseverance also brought along a tiny flying buddy. It's a mini helicopter named Ingenuity. Ingenuity made history by performing the first powered flight on another planet on April 19, 2021. It was only meant to fly a few times, but it kept going and made 72 flights in total. Unfortunately, on January 18, 2024, it got damaged during a rough landing, so NASA officially retired it. As for Perseverance, it has big goals. It's searching for signs that Mars once had life, especially in areas that used to have water. In its search, the rover is trying to figure out if the red planet even had the environments that could have supported life. It's also searching for past microbial life, collecting rock and soil samples to bring back to Earth one day, and testing out cool tech, like making oxygen from the Martian air to help prepare for future human missions. After landing in Jezero crater in 2021, Perseverance got to work right away, starting with its first campaign called Crater Floor. It drove south from its landing site and explored a spot called Saita. Then it returned to Crater Floor, fractured rough, and collected its first rock sample there. This was just the beginning of its exploration of Mars history. In its second campaign, Fan Front, the rover made its way toward an ancient delta where a river used to flow into the crater. Perseverance climbed up a valley to check out higher ground, looking for more clues about the past of the red planet. The third and fourth campaigns, Upper Fan and Margin Unit, had the rover studying rocks that could tell us more about the planet's climate and whether it could have supported life. In December 2024, they started planning Perseverance's fifth campaign, Northern Rim. It's supposed to study the crater's rim where rocks from deep below the surface were blasted to the top during an impact billions of years ago. Perseverance has made some awesome discoveries so far. It found volcanic rocks on the crater floor that showed they interacted with water. This was a surprise, because scientists thought the rocks would mostly be sedimentary, not volcanic. At a place called Wildcat Ridge, the rover even found signs of an ancient lake that could have supported life. The rocks Perseverance has found are great at preserving potential signs of past life, so this is a really big find. The rover has also discovered some of the sediments in the delta were deposited by calm waters. But later, massive floods brought large boulders into the crater. It means that Mars's climate must have been changing over time. Now, on top of that, Perseverance has done a few cool experiments. The MOXIE experiment managed to produce about 4 ounces of oxygen from the Martian atmosphere. It could be really helpful for future human missions. The rover also used its microphones to study sounds on Mars. It turned out that sound traveled more slowly there than on Earth. Plus, it was quieter on the red planet. The rover's Pixel tool analyzed rocks and found a bunch of minerals like ovoline, clays, and carbonates. This discovery showed that water had always played a big part in shaping Mars. The RIMFAX radar also helped the team see that the crater floor was made up of solid rock and volcanic material, and that the delta had formed in a calm lake-like environment. All in all, Perseverance has been giving us a much clearer picture of Mars's past. It's discovering evidence of volcanic activity, water, and environments that could have been suitable for life. It's also helping scientists gather crucial data for future missions. By studying the planet's geology, atmosphere, and potential for life, Perseverance is setting the stage for future exploration, and one day, maybe even for humans to walk on Mars. We've been dreaming about life on Mars for a long time. Not only about growing potatoes there in the future, but also about all the potatoes that could have been there in the past. Has there ever been life on Mars? Recently, scientists have found something that could be evidence of that. Let's find out what happened. Mars is the 4th planet from the Sun. A human hasn't set foot on Mars yet, but robots have set their wheels. The first spacecraft that visited the Red Planet were NASA Viking landers. They flew there back in 1976 and sent us a lot of interesting data. Back then, we didn't know anything about Mars. To us, it looked like a cold, lifeless desert. But since we're so similar, scientists began to wonder, has it always been like this? Or is it possible that once Mars used to be thriving and full of life? And in 2022, NASA's Mars rover Perseverance found something that could shed a light on this mystery. But first of all, what is Perseverance? Scientists have suggested that if there was life on Mars once, it's unlikely that it could simply disappear without a trace. It must have left some traces, perhaps underground, where they would be protected from radioactive solar tantrums and other nastiness. So we need to check the rocks. It's important to note that we aren't looking for life on Mars right now. There most likely isn't any. Instead, we want to look into the distant past of our twin planet. We're talking billions of years ago, when Mars could have been warm, green, and far from lifeless. In other words, we have to find dead microbes and various chemical compounds similar to ones on the Earth. This is the mission of our main character, Perseverance. It arrived on Mars in February of 2021. The spacecraft landed on the bottom of the 30-mile-wide Jezero crater, and after landing, it scooted over to the west, to the place that prompted scientists to choose Jezero for research. This place is a dried-up river delta, and this former river is already more than 3.5 billion years old. The Jezero crater itself was once a large lake. Yup, apparently there was life on Mars, and scientists have suggested that these places would be perfect as bodyguards of microbes. That's exactly what bacteria do on Earth. They hide, being still in the depths of lakes and ponds, so we could probably find traces there. The researchers believe that this particular lake has the highest scientific value in the entire mission. The highest chance to find rocks on which such bacteria could survive is here in Jezero. So Perseverance went to the delta. The row wasn't easy though. The rover missed a little and landed further than planned. As one famous movie said, "This little maneuver's going to cost us 51 years." Fortunately, Perseverance took only 1 year, and on the way, it was able to explore Jezero a little. The rover uses a complex built-in tool to explore the world. The tool is called Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman and Luminescence for Organics and Chemicals, or just SHERLOC. Boy, NASA sure loves its acronyms. As the device approached the delta, the signal of organic molecules became stronger. Soon, these signals were everywhere, and besides, they were the brightest that the scientists have ever seen. What does it mean? Elementary, my dear Watson. You know, Sherlock. It's time to dig. Since July 2021, Perseverance has drilled and collected 4 thin cores of sedimentary rock. The total number of collected rocks at the moment is 12. This is the first time in history that we're collecting something like this on another planet. These 4 cores were found on 2 rocks called Skinner Ridge and Wildcat Ridge. The first pair of cores, the ones from the Skinner Ridge, don't seem very interesting at first glance. They're quite close to what we can find in many places on Earth. However, if we look at them closer, we'll see that they're dotted with round grains of some dark material. These dark grains could have once been deposited on them by an ancient river, the same one that flowed into Jezero. It's possible that the river brought them from places hundreds of miles away from Jezero, and that's pretty cool. If we study these cores, we'll be able to learn even more about the far corners of Mars. Well, there are no corners on it, but you get the idea. Then, in April 2022, Perseverance did arrive at the delta, and then scientists finally found what they were looking for. The discovery, to put it mildly, excited them. They found 2 more cores, which held organic substances. This pair was taken from the Wildcat Ridge. It's found very close to the Skinner Ridge, but the 2 rocks are quite different from each other. These samples are lighter in color and more uniform. Most likely, they're mudstone, an unusual rock similar to clay, but harder and unable to absorb water. They're also finer grained than the cores of the Skinner Ridge. Why does it matter? Because the finer the grains in the stone, the more likely it is that there may be some traces of a past life in it. On Earth, fine-grained stones most often lie on the bottoms of ponds and in similar places. There, they can preserve the remains of dead organisms and similar stuff for years. And this is exactly what we found on them. Additionally, according to scientists, there was more organic matter in these 2 cores than in any other place studied by Perseverance so far. It probably accumulated there while the lake was gradually evaporating billions of years ago. So, there really was life on Mars? Well, let's slow down a little. Organic substances are molecules holding carbon. And yes, on Earth, they're most often associated with life, but not always. Sometimes they can form as a result of other things. Therefore, we cannot say for sure whether there was life on Mars. We don't know if these molecules really remain from some Martian microbes, or if they're the result of some other things. But the discovery is still very significant. We have to literally keep digging this way. To learn more about this organic matter, scientists need to collect a couple more samples of fine-grained rock. It would also be great to study the material lying around these former reservoirs. Perseverance has already moved to another area, to a place with a beautiful name, Enchanted Lake. Now it needs to look for similar things there. It will also continue to study Lake Jezero. Eventually, Perseverance will climb to the top of the delta and then continue exploring ancient sites outside the crater. Sometime before the end of 2022, Perseverance will probably have 6 or more samples of the Martian cores. Unfortunately, its tools, though complex, are quite limited. This data alone won't be enough for us to get a complete picture. Therefore, NASA plans to send other spacecraft to Jezero in the coming years. Together with the European Space Agency, they're working on the next robotic mission, known as the Mars Sample Return. The name speaks for itself. These devices will arrive and take away all the test tubes from the old Prospector Perseverance. After that, these samples will be delivered to Earth, though not by Amazon Prime, and then scientists will be able to analyze them in advanced laboratories. However, all this will take a really long time. The launch of this mission is scheduled for 2027-2028, and the spacecrafts won't be able to return until 2033. But if everything goes well, it will be the first samples in history delivered to Earth from Mars. In other words, there's still enough space for research, literally. And yes, we don't yet know the true meaning of these finds. But that's why the entire mission was created, right? And who knows? Maybe in a few years we'll finally find out the truth about what happened on Mars billions of years ago. Ooh, check out the Martian! Made you look. Mars looks like a silent, barren red desert, but it hides a terrifying threat no astronaut can escape: Martians. Nah, it's worse: dust. It might sound odd at first, but Martian dust is razor-sharp, toxic, and relentless. It's filled with chemicals so dangerous they can destroy not just the technology, but your body from the inside. The dust we breathe on Earth is worn smooth over thousands of years by water and wind. But Mars doesn't have a nice, delightful atmosphere and tons of water like we do. Its dust, called regolith, is angular and cruel, and unfortunately, it doesn't want to stay politely on the ground. It's constantly falling from the sky and covering everything. Every few years, Mars undergoes planet-wide dust storms. They coat landers, vehicles, habitats in a thick, suffocating blanket. NASA's rovers have already been crippled by this invisible threat. Their Opportunity rover, the plucky machine that long outlived its original mission, was finally finished off when dust covered its solar panels. The poor rover couldn't recharge. And eventually, the dust will get into spacesuits. Then astronauts would be in danger, because this regolith is laden with some dangerous stuff. The first is silica, fine, inhalable particles. Once you breathe those in, they can cause an incurable scarring of lung tissue. Next, gypsum, a mineral that, while harmless in small doses, could also cause big respiratory issues when inhaled constantly. One of the most horrifying ones is perchlorates. These are salts that can mess up thyroid glands and create a situation where the body stops producing enough blood cells. And finally, nanophase iron oxides. These are tiny iron particles that can infiltrate the bloodstream, and trust me, that's not going to be pretty either. Martian dust is also exceptionally fine. Individual dust grains are as small as 3 micrometers, which is about the size of a mold spore. For comparison, a human hair is about 30 times thicker. That means it could get in super easily and get deep into the lungs. Once inside the body, the dust isn't easily expelled. There's this sticky mucus in human lungs that serves to keep us safe from stuff like that, designed to trap and expel invaders. But particles smaller than 5 micrometers bypass the lung's natural defenses. You might not even notice anything, while the dust would remain trapped inside you until it eventually enters the bloodstream. You might think we just have to filter it, but regolith is super hard to protect people from. Exposure to it could happen in every imaginable way: through inhalation, contaminated suits and surfaces, eye exposure, which could even lead to blindness, or even accidentally eating contaminated food and water. Sure, astronauts will be shielded inside high-tech suits, but even the best suits won't be perfect. Regolith is small and clings to surfaces even with electrostatic charges and mechanical tenacity. It can sneak into helmet seals and worm its way into ventilation systems. Or, say we build a habitat module, but its air filters could clog during a dust storm. Or the opportunity situation might repeat. Solar arrays covered with dust and failing just when life support systems need full power. The consequences for human crews could be catastrophic. But hey, luckily, there's good news. NASA is already thinking ahead about this. First, dust filtration will be essential. They want to fill habitats and rovers with high-efficiency air systems, the ones that would trap even the finest of particles. Of course, they'd still clog and would have to be replaced, which means that future missions will have to carry extra filters, enough for years of exposure, or even invent self-cleaning filtration systems. There's also this thing called electrostatic repulsion devices. It's technology that uses electric fields to push dust away from surfaces. This could keep spacesuits, airlocks, and life support modules dust-free. Of course, the strictest protocols must be inside habitats. Poor astronauts would have to do home chores literally every day. Vacuum their suits, scrub floors, replace air filters. Imagine conquering other planets only to end up doing home chores again. What's even worse is that we already have space radiation, which is everywhere above the Earth's atmosphere. It's been a huge headache for decades. Adding Martian dust exposure to the mix would make that problem even worse, not even mentioning freezing nights and the lack of a supportive atmosphere. The grim truth is that there will be no emergency evacuations from Mars. The red planet lies at least 9 months of travel away from Earth. There are also communication delays of up to 22 minutes each way. So, no matter what happens, astronauts will have to be fully self-reliant. The journey to Mars is going to be messy and super complicated. Space isn't a vacation spot. Your muscles waste away in zero gravity. You experience vision loss because the brain pressures against your eyes, your blood changes, and that's just what astronauts on Earth orbit go through. And this isn't the only problem NASA is currently facing. Another one is how to send stuff there in general. You can't ship every brick and sell it to Mars. It's too heavy, too expensive, and too slow. So, our astronauts will have to DIY their way into survival right there on the spot. We'll have to grow food in red dirt, print habitats out of nothing, and engineer microbes that turn carbon dioxide into breathable oxygen. They'll also have to get used to new, weird living conditions. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun, right after Earth, and it receives less sunlight than we do. Its gravity is about 40% of Earth's, which means when standing there, you'll feel lighter and your bones will weaken faster. 1 year there lasts 687 Earth days. But hey, you get twice the birthdays. And yeah, it's livable. It's just wrapped in an unbreathable carbon dioxide atmosphere, dusted with toxic soils, and baked in unfiltered cosmic radiation. Even water exists, frozen at the poles and buried underground, though no oceans. Space living will be part science fair, part medieval farm, and part sci-fi horror. Some space agencies are talking about terraforming. That means changing Mars to be more Earth-like, thickening its atmosphere, warming its soil, releasing liquid water. Sounds like salvation, but it's actually extremely complicated and dangerous. While there are no little green people to greet us on Mars, there might still be life there, in the forms of bacteria, ancient, slow-moving, tucked deep underground. Mars used to have entire oceans covering its northern hemisphere. Back in the day, it resembled Earth. It might have had a thick atmosphere, rivers slicing through canyons, rain falling from the skies, and lakes shimmering under twin moons. But somewhere, about 3.5 billion years ago, things changed. The water dried out or froze. The planet's atmosphere thinned into a whisper. Now, all we have from this time are ancient signs, the valleys, the deltas, the hints of methane in the air. They remain like a fossil record. All this means that life could have existed on Mars. Not some big animals or human-like species, that's extremely unlikely, but some tiny organisms, and unfortunately, if they were there, we struggle to find them now. Still, some bacteria are extremely persistent. It's possible that we'll find traces of them somewhere on the Martian surface. That would be our first ever living organisms found outside our planet, and proof that extraterrestrial life is possible and not as rare as we thought. But if we start terraforming, we might destroy these ecosystems before we even find them. We could erase Mars's ancient history, its geological wonders, and its right to exist as it is. Do we really have the right to do all that just because we want beachfront property on Valles Marineris? It's the Jurassic Park dilemma all over again. We're so preoccupied with whether we could do that we don't stop to think if we should. Plus, exploring Mars isn't just about discovering life. It's about understanding Earth's future, the nature of life itself, and maybe even finding humanity's second home. We might also discover that we should put more effort into cleaning up our current home. Meanwhile, Mars researchers remain optimistic. They think that with proper planning and equipment, all the dangers are manageable. The road to Mars won't just demand bigger rockets and better suits. It will demand wisdom, and we'll see how the future unfolds. Well, here you are. You're the first person to set foot on Mars. And your first mission is to explore a place called Jezero Crater. You're wading through the thick, rust-colored dust when suddenly you trip over something and almost fall. You lean closer to examine the culprit and recoil in horror. A skull is staring back at you. Who did it belong to? An ancient Martian dinosaur? A representative of a long-lost civilization? Now, this isn't a made-up story. That's what NASA's Mars robot called Perseverance would tell you if it could speak and, had consciousness. The rover had indeed found something strange, but it wasn't a real skull. It just looked like one. In reality, those were rocks that seemed to be out of place on the red planet. Right now, Perseverance is exploring the edge of a big, empty bowl-shaped area called Jezero Crater. Scientists think that a long time ago, this crater held a giant lake. Perhaps it was even full of tiny life. Since December 2024, the rover has been rolling down a steep hill called Witch Hazel Hill. It's an important mission because this hill might hold secrets about what Mars's weather and environment were like billions of years ago. Anyway, on April 11, 2025, Perseverance stopped to look at a special spot where two types of rock meet. One was light-colored and the other was dark. And right at that spot, scientists saw a weird-looking rock they later named Skull Hill. It stood out dramatically because it was dark and had a sharp shape. But the creepiest thing? It was full of little holes, a real nightmare for those with trypophobia. So NASA shared this discovery in a blog post. They explained that Skull Hill didn't look like the other rocks nearby. The area where Perseverance found these strange rocks is called Port Anson. Scientists think that many of the rocks there didn't originally form in that spot. They were moved from somewhere else an exceptionally long time ago. But how did they move, or what moved them? Now, don't get your hopes up. It doesn't mean we'll find space neighbors on Mars. These kinds of rocks are called floats. They are likely to have traveled a long way across Mars billions of years ago, back when the planet was much warmer and wetter, with rivers, lakes, and maybe even oceans. As the water dried up and the soft ground around the rocks slowly wore away over time, the tougher rocks stayed behind, sitting on the surface. Now scientists are trying to figure out how the strange holes on Skull Hill were made. One idea is that tiny parts of the rock broke off and wore away over time, leaving behind little pits. Another idea is that Martian winds, which carry dust and tiny rocks, might have slowly scraped the surface, kind of like sandpaper, and created the holes. Skull Hill is dark-colored, and at first, scientists thought it might be a meteorite that had come from space. But when they looked more closely at the chemicals in the rock using Perseverance's supercam, the results didn't match what you would expect from a typical meteorite.
Nope.
So, scientists now think Skull Hill might be a volcanic rock. On both Earth and Mars, dark volcanic rocks get their color from minerals like olivine, pyrozine, and biotite. If Skull Hill is volcanic, it might have come from old lava flows nearby that have broken down over time. Or maybe it was blasted out of the rock during a huge crash, something like an asteroid impact that dug deep into the ground and pulled up volcanic rock from below. What helps scientists in their research is that Perseverance now has some cool tricks that help it figure out what Martian rocks are made of. That's how we can learn where the rocks came from and how they formed. Lately, the rover has been super busy. In just a few months, it has collected samples from 5 rocks, studied 7 rocks very closely, and blasted 83 rocks with its laser to learn about them from a distance. That's the fastest pace of research since the rover landed on Mars 4 years ago. At least that's what NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab says. Usually, it can take months to find just one interesting rock in a crater. But up on the edge of the crater, aka the rim, cool and strange rocks are popping up all the time. Scientists are especially excited about getting these rock samples back to Earth to see if they'll show signs that life ever existed on Mars. But there's a problem. The plan to bring the samples back, called the Mars Sample Return Mission, is really complicated, expensive, and running into delays. So, for now, the samples are staying on Mars, waiting for their ride home. Hey, Uber! There's another rover that is currently working hard to help us get more information about our neighbor. That's Curiosity, and it might have found a clue about what happened to Mars's atmosphere from billions of years ago, thick and carbon dioxide rich. If the red planet once had warm temperatures and flowing water, what are the signs of all the carbon that should have been left behind? Now normally, a planet like that would have carbonates, minerals made when carbon dioxide reacts with water and rock buried in its soil. But on Mars, very few carbonates have ever been found, which has been a big mystery. Now, scientists might finally have an answer. A new study suggests that iron carbonate, called siderite, may be hidden inside Mars's sulfate-rich rock layers. These layers weren't easy to spot in satellite images from orbit. That might be the reason why carbonates may have gone unnoticed for so long. At one point in the past, Mars's carbon cycle got out of balance. The rocks started pulling in more carbon dioxide than they were releasing. Over time, this may have caused Mars to lose too much CO2 from its atmosphere. It cooled the planet and made it dry and lifeless. The planet might have been still habitable when this happened, but once carbon dioxide started turning into siderite, Mars may have begun getting too cold to support life. The Curiosity rover found these carbon-rich rocks in Gale Crater, an area on Mars that used to be full of water. The rocks also contain a lot of salts, which usually form when water dries up. This supports the idea that Mars went through some huge changes, likely from a planet with a nice climate to the cold, dry world we see today. If scientists find more siderite in other parts of Mars, it could help explain where all that ancient carbon dioxide went. Even better, it would support the idea that Mars was once warm, wet, and maybe even habitable. But that's not the only discovery Curiosity has made. The rover has a set of special instruments called SAM. Now, SAM's job is to study the rocks, dirt, and air on Mars to learn more about the planet. And one of SAM's biggest findings happened when it studied rocks from Gale Crater. SAM found organic molecules. Organic molecules are special because they're made of carbon, and on Earth, carbon is super important for life. Plants, animals, and people are all made from carbon-based molecules. So, finding these molecules on Mars makes scientists wonder if it's another proof that Mars once had life, a long, long time ago. When SAM looked even closer, it found certain patterns in gases like carbon dioxide and methane. These patterns might match what you would expect if tiny ancient life forms were making organic molecules. But there's also another explanation. These molecules might have been made by sunlight reacting with gases in Mars's air. In this case, no life would have been involved at all. On Mars, strong ultraviolet light from the sun can break apart and mix up molecules, creating new ones that eventually land on the ground. So even though scientists don't have a clear answer yet, finding organic molecules is a really big deal. At the very least, It tells us that Mars had the right ingredients for life, even if we don't know yet if life actually existed there. Now, scientists are using SAM and Curiosity's other tools to keep searching for more clues. The red parched earth under your feet is shaking. Large cracks are opening in the ground, threatening to swallow you. But unlike on Earth, these quakes aren't coming from within the planet. A threat coming from space is triggering them. Scientists have made a shocking discovery about Mars quakes. By using AI and NASA's InSight data, they found out that some of those tremors are caused by meteorite impacts. It means that Mars gets hit 2.5 times more often than we thought, and new craters are forming all the time. But the scariest part is that these impacts don't just shake the ground. They send powerful shock waves deep into the planet, revealing a hidden seismic highway and an unstable interior, unlike anything we imagined. This changes everything we thought we knew about Mars. So now, the big question is, what else is lurking beneath the surface? But let's follow scientists' train of thought first. They took Marsquake data from NASA's InSight lander and compared it with fresh impact craters spotted by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. That's when they discovered that some impacts create a seismic highway through the mantle instead of being absorbed by the crust. Even though NASA shut down InSight in 2022, its data is still precious. The lander, which placed a seismometer on Mars, recorded over 1,300 Marsquakes, some caused by underground rock cracking under heat and pressure, others, apparently, by meteoroids slamming into the surface of the red planet. By studying how seismic waves move through the crust, mantle, and core, scientists keep piecing together Mars's deep structure. In the past, researchers already linked impact craters with seismic data. But these new studies are the first time when a fresh impact has been connected to quakes detected in Cerberus fossae. That's a highly active region 1,000 miles away from InSight. Scientists have discovered this 71-foot-wide crater much farther from NASA's InSight lander than expected, if we consider the strength of the seismic waves it produced. Mars's crust was thought to absorb most of the energy from impacts, which would limit how far seismic waves could travel. But the analysis of this crater revealed that, instead of getting dampened, the waves took a more direct and deeper path through the planet's mantle. This unexpected finding suggests that Mars has a seismic highway, which allows quakes to spread much farther than previously believed. Now, the InSight team will need to reassess their models of Mars' internal composition and structure. And then, we might better understand how impact-generated seismic signals can reach such depths. Manually sorting through the vast amount of data would have taken years. But luckily, these days, there are new tools, and scientists can go from tens of thousands of images to just a few in a matter of days. So, researchers focused on finding craters within approximately 1,800 miles of InSight's location. Their aim was to identify those that formed while the lander's seismometer was active. By comparing before and after images from the context camera over time, they identified 123 fresh craters to cross-reference with InSight's seismic data. Out of those, 49 craters were potential matches for quakes detected by InSight's seismometer. And after conducting some more analysis, the team decided that the 71-foot Cerberus fossae impact crater was the main finding. This discovery is likely to help scientists differentiate between signals from internal quakes and those caused by meteoroid impacts. Initially, they believed that Cerberus fossae produced a lot of high-frequency seismic signals linked to quakes originating inside Mars. But the new data suggests that some of this activity may have been caused by impacts, not internal processes. Another mystery scientists haven't been able to crack for 50 years is why Mars is split into two very different halves. But thanks to recordings of Marsquakes, they may have finally found the answer. Since the 1970s, researchers have known that Mars has two distinct regions. The northern lowlands cover about 2/3 of the planet's northern hemisphere, and the southern highlands make up the rest. The southern highlands sit about 3 miles higher than the northern lowlands, and the crust, the planet's outer layer, like a shell, is thicker in the south. This strange divide is known as the Martian Dichotomy. There are two potential explanations for this imbalance. One theory suggests that an unknown internal process within Mars created the difference. The other claims that a massive collision, probably with a moon-sized space rock or several smaller impacts, once reshaped the planet's surface. But Mars' surface is extremely old. That's why pinpointing exactly what happened has been difficult. But now, a new study, published on December 27, 2024, has used Mars quake data from NASA's InSight lander to figure out whether the cause of this difference lies deep inside the planet. InSight was positioned near the boundary between the northern lowlands and southern highlands. Its mission included recording seismic data from Marsquakes, which travel through the planet's mantle, the rock layer beneath the crust. So scientists compared how these waves moved under both lowlands and highlands. They looked for differences in the planet's deep interior. It turns out that the seismic waves lost energy much faster when traveling through the southern highlands. It means that the mantle beneath this region is significantly hotter than in the north. It's compelling evidence that internal planetary forces, rather than an external impact, cause Mars' unusual split. The research team believes that the temperature difference between Mars' two halves can be traced back to ancient tectonic activity. It once shaped the planet, but later stopped. At some point in the past, Mars had moving tectonic plates, like Earth's. As these plates shifted, they, along with the molten rock beneath them, could have created the Martian Dichotomy. But eventually, the movement stopped, leaving behind what scientists call a stagnant lid. That's a thick, immobile layer over the planet's molten interior. If this turns out to be true, it might mean that the mantle beneath the southern highlands is still pushing upward, while the mantle under the northern lowlands is sinking deeper toward the planet's core. This ongoing process could explain why Mars' crust is thicker in the south. At the same time, we can't completely rule out the idea that an external impact created the dichotomy. Some recent studies suggest that a giant collision could still be a possible explanation. To solve this mystery for good, scientists will need more Marsquake data and detailed models of how Mars originally formed. By the way, if you ever decide to visit Mars, you might come across the hero of our video today, the InSight lander itself. It was supposed to launch in March 2016, but a problem with one of its instruments caused a delay. It was a vacuum leak in the seismometer. NASA rescheduled the launch for May 2018, and the issue was fixed in the meantime. But this delay increased the total cost from $675 million to $830 million. Still, InSight successfully landed on Mars on November 26, 2018. But over time, dust built up on its solar panels, making it harder to recharge. The InSight lander runs on solar panels and batteries, but it needs occasional wind gusts, called cleaning events, to clear dust from the panels. Unfortunately, the place where InSight landed didn't get enough of these winds to keep the lander fully powered. By February 2021, during the Martian winter, thick dust had covered the panels, and they were only producing 27% of their full capacity. To save power, NASA started putting InSight into hibernation mode, shutting down instruments gradually to keep its electronics warm. They hoped better weather would allow the lander to recharge and wake up by July 2021. In May 2021, the team found a clever way to restore some power by using the lander's arm to move sand onto the panels, helping the wind clean off some of the dust. But eventually, InSight was only generating 1/10 of the power from the sunlight than it did right upon arrival. In July 2022, NASA put it in low power mode to keep detecting Marsquakes. The lander kept operating until December 2022. On December 20th, NASA announced that InSight had lost contact with Earth on December 15th, and the mission officially ended on December 21st, 2022. It looks like a regular beach, but something sets off an alarm blaring in your head. The sand looks too red, the sun is too bright, the wind is all wrong, it's hard to breathe, and there's no water in the ocean. Well, panic not, it's normal, since you're on Mars. For the longest time, we've seen Mars as a dry, lifeless dust ball, a freezing desert where water exists only as ice or vapor. But new research suggests that billions of years ago, it was a totally different place. and instead of endless dust, it may have had something much more familiar to us – sunny, sandy beaches. Scientists from Penn State, UC Berkeley, and Guangzhou University studied radar data from China's Zhurong rover. It started to roll across Mars in 2021. While exploring the surface of the red planet, it found sloping rock formations that looked strikingly similar to the ones found on Earth's coastlines. Those are called foreshore deposits. They form when waves push sand onto a shoreline. But Zhurong wasn't just taking pretty pictures. It also had ground-penetrating radar, a tool that allowed it to scan deep below the Martian surface as it traveled 1.2 miles between May 2021 and May 2022. And it found something pretty wild – layers of sediment sloping down at a 15-degree angle. This pattern is identical to the ones left behind by waves on Earth. And this wasn't from the wind, volcanoes, or anything else. It just looked like a real beach. And that's actually a big deal. Because if there were waves and tides, there must have been a large body of water. That means Mars may have once had just the right conditions for hosting life. Even after 3.5 billion years, the formations are still incredibly similar to beaches on Earth. So there must have been a time when Mars was much more than just a dusty rock in space. After revealing this shocking news, Zhurong's radar scanned 260 feet deep into the ground, discovering sediment layers. They once formed along a path perpendicular to an ancient shoreline, the one that likely existed 4 billion years ago. At the same time, it might not be all that surprising. Back then, Mars wasn't the dry, frozen wasteland we see today. It had a thicker atmosphere, a warmer climate, and plenty of liquid water. And I'm not even talking about some tiny puddle. Beaches don't form without a massive body of water. For waves to shape the land like this, there had to be rivers flowing into a vast ocean. Powerful currents had to be moving sand around, and water had to stick around for a long time. This couldn't be just a brief wet spell. It was a period where Mars was hydrologically active for millions of years, potentially being a place where life could have thrived. This discovery gives even more weight to one theory. It has been puzzling scientists since the 1970s. That's when NASA's Viking spacecraft snapped images of what looked like a shoreline wrapping around Mars's northern hemisphere. But there was a problem. The shoreline was all over the place, with elevations varying by up to 6 miles. Wow, which is nothing like our flat, mostly consistent shorelines we see on Earth. This difference made scientists doubt that a Martian ocean ever existed. For years, scientists have been trying to crack this mystery. In 2007, they suggested that Mars' rotation actually shifted billions of years ago. As the planet's massive Tharsis volcanic region grew, the planet's spin axis tilted, warping the surface. It could explain why the shoreline is so uneven today. In other words, what once was a flat and level landscape got distorted over time. Interestingly, Mars has been dropping hints about its watery past for years. Curiosity found ancient ripples in Gale Crater. There were signs of a long-gone lake. Perseverance is currently studying a fossilized river delta in Jezero Crater. Now, with Zhurong's evidence of an ancient ocean, it all comes together. Small lakes? Check. Rivers? Check. A massive ocean covering the northern lowlands? Quite possibly. Zhurong's mission wrapped up in May 2022 after dust blocked its solar panels. But future missions could still explore those ancient shoreline deposits. Scientists might send new missions to drill deeper into the ground to retrieve samples. Or we could use better radar to map Mars' subsurface in more detail. There's a real hope to excavate those areas in the future and find even more clues about Mars' past. At the same time, NASA's Perseverance rover is already working hard in Jezero Crater collecting samples. Scientists hope that it will bring them back to Earth in the 2030s. While those won't include samples from the ancient ocean, they could still help us find out more about Mars's wetter history. For now, the discovery of ancient beaches on Mars gives us a peek into a time when the planet might have looked a lot more like Earth, with water, waves, and rivers. Now let's speak about the Perseverance rover that's still working on Mars in more detail. It has a special drill on its arm and uses it to scrape off the dust and top layers of rock, making small 2-inch wide circles in Jezero Crater. Once, one of its cameras took a close-up photo, and the image showed that the rock wasn't smooth. It was made of tiny interlocking crystals. The rover used two special tools to analyze the rock's chemistry. The results confirmed that the rock, named Rochette, was volcanic. It meant it formed from lava or magma, not from mud and clay, like scientists had expected from a former lakebed. Perseverance, also known as Percy, landed on Mars in February 2021, along with a small helicopter named Ingenuity. It is the most advanced rover ever sent to Mars, following in the footsteps of Curiosity, Spirit, Opportunity, and others. But Percy has a different mission. While older rovers mainly studied Martian rocks and climate, Perseverance is searching for signs of past life. Scientists chose Jezero Crater because it looks like it used to be a lake where tiny life forms could have lived. The rover drills, scrapes, and collects rock samples to study with its science tools. It also saves some samples to bring back to Earth in the future for even closer study. Perseverance has found some surprising things on Mars. Scientists studying the data it sent back have discovered that Jezero Crater has changed a lot over time. Long ago, this area had flowing lava, a lake that lasted for thousands of years, rivers that carried mud and sand, and even massive floods that brought in rocks from far away. It means that Jezero's history is more active and unpredictable than scientists expected. This definitely made it harder to find the sedimentary rocks they were looking for. But it has also revealed new places where ancient life might have existed. Another exciting discovery is that every rock Perseverance has studied so far contains carbon-based materials, the same stuff that life on Earth is built from. NASA's Perseverance rover also carries a special tool called MOXIE, which has managed to make oxygen from the carbon dioxide in Mars' atmosphere for the first time. Over 16 test runs, MOXIE produced about 4 ounces of oxygen. That's enough to keep an astronaut breathing for about 4 hours. It worked even better than expected, making up to 0.42 ounces of oxygen per hour. After running successfully for 2 years, MOXIE completed its final test in September 2023. It brings us one step closer to sending humans to Mars in the future. In any case, back to the discovery of ancient shorelines on Mars. This finding might help us see the red planet with new eyes. Water might have been flowing across its surface for tens of millions of years, carving out lakes, rivers, and even a vast ocean. What else have we misunderstood? Did Martian dinos stroll across the vast green valleys of the planet? Or were those bizarre marine creatures the likes of which we can't even imagine? Well, we don't know yet, but one thing is very likely. Mars had an era of warmth, water, and maybe life. Like the little engine that could, NASA's Curiosity rover has been bravely crawling over Gale Crater on Mars, trying to see what could have happened billions of years ago that made the planet a red desert. And it looks like it might have finally stumbled upon something. While life seems impossible on Mars now, eons ago, it may have been a world more like Earth, with a thick atmosphere, water, and maybe even life. And it seems things changed just recently. Studies show that just 3 billion years ago, the northern hemisphere of Mars might have hosted a stable ocean. On Earth, the Archean Eon was in full swing. Volcanoes were going crazy, and life was taking its first steps. Life was also perhaps taking its first steps on Mars. No, not a frozen wasteland like Antarctica, but in a body of water like an Earth ocean. And this Earth-like climate extended Mars's habitable period by about 500 million years more than we thought before. In other words, there was a 500 million years where it was exactly like Earth, with conditions just right for life to start forming. But then, something happened that changed things forever. The atmosphere thinned, Mars lost its oceans, and became the cold, desolate place we see today. It's been a mystery for a while, but now, Curiosity stumbled upon something interesting in the Gale Crater, a vast basin on the Martian surface where, billions of years ago, water once flowed freely. It found carbonates, stuff that can tell us all about the ancient Martian climate. There are minerals that form when carbon dioxide, or CO2, dissolves in water, which means that, to create them, you need two things: a nice thick atmosphere and liquid water. Now on Earth, CO2 is super important because it helps trap heat from the sun in our atmosphere. This keeps our planet warm enough to support life. Plants eat it during photosynthesis to create oxygen, which humans and animals need to breathe. On Mars, the presence of CO2 shows that there really was some kind of climate system. When CO2 starts dissolving in water, it reacts with certain minerals in the ground, like calcium or magnesium, and creates carbonates. That's kind of how seashells form in oceans here on Earth. But instead, it's happening with rocks on Mars. And this discovery is huge. These carbonates act like fossils of the planet's ancient climate. They store information about what Mars was like long ago. By studying them, scientists can get a peek into Mars' past back in the day when water was present. They can tell us how the Martian atmosphere has changed over time, show whether the atmosphere was warm or cold, or if there was a lot of water around, and what happened to the planet in general. Luckily, Curiosity can study this stuff right there. It has the sample analysis at Mars and tunable laser spectrometer. Those are like Mars's forensic tools. The SAM is a mini lab on wheels, and is capable of heating Martian rock samples to extreme temperatures. There are 2 ovens that can heat samples to about 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense heat causes rocks to release gases trapped inside, the ones that are like ancient fingerprints of Mars, atmosphere. Once they're released, the TLS analyzes them in detail, breaking them down to the tiniest parts. And what the scientists discovered blew away all our previous assumptions about Mars' habitability. Turns out, it's not just about Mars once being wet, but there was something that led to the gradual drying and cooling of the planet. In other words, Mars's water didn't just disappear. It evaporated quickly under extreme conditions. So, what happened to it? Astronomers produced 2 possible explanations. The first one says that Mars went through periods where it was sometimes wet and sometimes dry. The water didn't last a long time. It may have appeared in short bursts, with periods where it would dry up and then return. The second possibility is more intense. The water that was there was incredibly salty and cold, so instead of being liquid, it was mostly frozen in ice. This would have made the planet way too harsh for life as we know it, since the conditions would have been too extreme for anything to survive. Both possibilities sadly mean that Mars wasn't cozy and full of life in the past like some hoped. Well, at least not on the surface. That doesn't mean underground life couldn't exist though. This one is still a possibility. And to find more, we must keep looking for hints of water now. Actually, after years of exploring Mars, scientists have just made a mind-blowing discovery. Deep beneath the rocky surface of the red planet lies a hidden reservoir of liquid water. Real water this time, not the frozen ice caps or vapor in the atmosphere, though it's miles below the Martian crust. This breakthrough comes from data collected by NASA's InSight lander. This guy spent 4 years listening to the subtle tremors of Mars. You know, Marsquakes. And it analyzed over 1,300 of them. Thanks to this, scientists were able to map out how seismic waves move through the planet. And it revealed pockets of liquid water buried 6 to 12 miles underground. Not just one lake, but puddles. So they used the same methods we here on Earth use to find underground water, oil, and gas. And they were able to piece together the Martian underground system. You see, as the water disappeared and dried out, some of it escaped into space when Mars lost its thick protective atmosphere. However, this discovery shows that much of the water didn't disappear. It just sank deep underground, where it still lies today. So close, but out of reach. That's a huge step forward. Water is the most important molecule when it comes to shaping the destiny of a planet. And also, even though we said that Mars wasn't filled with life before, this doesn't take away the possibility of it having life now. If liquid water still exists deep underground, could there be some little microbes hiding there as well? Life as we know it can't survive without liquid water. And now, with this, the idea of life on Mars has become more plausible than ever. There's a catch, though. While this water may seem like a jackpot to future Mars colonization plans, it's not going to be easy to reach. To say that drilling 6 miles deep into the crust is no small feat is an understatement. Just so you know, here on Earth, the deepest we've drilled is about 7.5 miles. It was in the Kola Super Deep Borehole project. And this project pushed current technology to its limits. Intense heat, pressure, equipment failures, you name it. With Mars, that would be even crazier. It has a much colder environment, extremely thin atmosphere, and lack of infrastructure. That would make any drilling mission extremely difficult. To reach water reservoirs buried so deep on Mars, we would need specialized drilling equipment that would somehow get delivered there. It should also be able to handle extreme cold, low pressure, and different gravity. Oh, and it should all operate remotely and preferably not break, all while it needs tons of energy. Yeah. Now, it's possible that we would only be able to do this in the future when we'll have automated systems or astronauts on Mars. That's not a quick task for even the most ambitious billionaires. So, for now, what these reservoirs hide is a mystery. But at least it's not the only one. As we mentioned, Mars hides one of the greatest secrets beneath its frozen southern pole, another buried vast lake of liquid water. The radar revealed it as it scanned the ice cap in this region. Hey, just don't make me pronounce it. Now, it's weird that it managed to stay liquid with such low temperatures. It's probably because of the geothermal heat beneath Mars' surface, and life could be there too. So now they're thinking about probing this lake first. That would be much easier. Curiosity's work is incredible, and it keeps helping us peel back the layers of Mars' ancient climate, giving us new pieces to the puzzle of what happened to our neighbor, and this could help us avoid similar mistakes in the future. Recently, scientists have made an astounding discovery that can change the entire course of Mars exploration. Apparently, there are oceans of liquid water on the red planet, so the future looks bright. We could use this water to support future missions, and then even relocate to Mars since we wouldn't need to worry about where to get this precious liquid, right? Well, there's one big problem. These oceans of liquid water are in Mars, so deep inside that we aren't likely to get there. At least that's what a new analysis of seismic data collected by the Mars Insight lander claims. Huge reserves of liquid water seem to be the best explanation for some seismic quirks of the red planet. So all this precious water is out of our reach. But we need to find it to solve the puzzle of the aquatic history of our blushing, dusty neighbor. And the first thing we need to do is identify where the water is and how much of it the planet is hiding.
Navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed and we are seeing significant deceleration.
Now, our rovers are scurrying about on the surface of the red planet, gathering all the available data on the planet's surface geology. And it's getting increasingly obvious that Mars was once covered with water. Many factors, from Martian terrains to ancient dry lake beds and deltas, suggest that there was a time when the planet was quite soppy. These days, there's still some water on and right below the surface of Mars, but it's in the form of ice and nowhere near what Mars had in the ancient past. To understand how much of it could have been on the red planet billions of years ago, we must know where all this water went. There are two spots where the water could have gone: into space or toward the interior of Mars. Then it could have been isolated as either liquid reservoirs or ice deposits. Currently, we don't have any way of measuring how much water once leaked away. But now, we finally can find out more about the gooey center of the red planet. All thanks to the Mars Insight lander. It isn't operating anymore, but from November 2018 to December 2022, it was listening to the hums and rumbles and monitoring the activity below its feet. The thing is, acoustic waves generated by seismic activity deep inside the planet can change according to the composition and density of the material these waves are moving through. And scientists can get a lot of information analyzing the behavior of seismic waves. In this case, they used a model similar to those used to map underground oil fields and aquifers on our home planet. Then, with the help of this model, they analyzed the data gathered by InSight on Mars. They discovered that the best explanation could be that there was a layer of fractured rocks whose cracks were filled with water deep under the surface of the red planet. That layer could be at a depth of 7 to 12 miles. That's why it would be extremely tricky for future missions to get to it. And still, the new discovery could help us understand the Martian water cycle. Confirming the existence of a large reservoir of liquid water can help us sneak a peek at what the climate on Mars used to be, or what it could be like one day. And if once Mars had a lot of water, it could have been habitable in the ancient past and might become habitable in the future. Water is crucial for life as we know it, so underground water reservoirs on the red planet could already be habitable. Maybe, while we're talking, tiny microorganisms or even some tentacled creatures are living their lives in the comfort of their underground home. On Earth, super deep mines do host life, and the bottom of the ocean, with its immense unbelievable pressures, isn't lifeless either. So far, we haven't found any evidence of life on Mars, but for now, it sounds like this place has the potential to sustain life. InSight data has shown that there isn't likely to be a lot of water ice in the upper crust of the planet, at least in the region around the lander. But if it turns out that there is a water-rich layer deep below the surface and stretching around the entire globe of the planet, then there would be enough water to fill ancient ocean beds and even more. Now, Mars isn't the only place outside Earth where there is water or where we might one day find water. Take the good old Moon, for example. On Earth's natural satellite, water can be found all over the surface, but it's not the water you might be imagining. On the Moon, water remains mostly as ice, and it's distributed unevenly. For example, the poles of the Moon are the regions that never receive sunlight. This is the reason they're extremely cold, and it's no wonder there's a lot of ice there. The ice in these areas is often mixed with the lunar soil and hiding deep below the surface. Then there's Enceladus, the sixth largest moon of Saturn. In reality, it's not that large, just 314 miles across. In other words, this moon is small enough to fit inside Arizona. Ooh, we should try that. Well, interestingly, when the Cassini space probe first arrived at Saturn, researchers were expecting Enceladus to be a frozen ball of ice. But what they saw was plumes of icy particles and water vapor erupting from geysers on the moon's surface. It was clear that there was a massive ocean between the moon's rocky core and its icy shell. Then there's Jupiter's moon Europa. Scientists think that this world is one of the most promising places in the solar system when it comes to searching for new life forms. That's because Europa has a huge saltwater ocean as deep as 40 to 100 miles. And even though it's under a layer of ice that is likely to be 10 to 20 miles thick, it's still potentially habitable. Astronomers believe that plumes of water might erupt from cracks in the ice shell and release the contents of the moon's ocean into space. The temperature, pressure, and chemistry are very different on Europa, and astronomers aren't sure yet how the ice behaves there. That's the main reason they haven't figured out yet how deep or large the water reservoirs on Europa are and how long they need to refreeze. But out of all the places where we could find water in the universe, the most bizarre is probably open space. In 2011, two teams of astronomers discovered a cloud of water floating freely among stars. It was the largest and farthest reservoir of water ever detected. So this massive cloud of water vapor surrounds a black hole. But not just any black hole. This one's a quasar, located 12 billion light-years from Earth. The conditions around this quasar must be really special to create such an enormous amount of water. This cloud contains 140 trillion times the volume of all the water on Earth. That's enough to give every person on the planet a whole planet's worth of water 20,000 times over. Sounds wild, doesn't it? But there's something even cooler. Astronomers think this water cloud formed just 1.6 billion years after the universe began. This discovery is yet another sign that water has been around all over the universe, even in its early days. But here's the kicker. Until they found this, scientists had never detected water vapor so far back in time. Sure, there's water in our Milky Way galaxy, but most of it's frozen solid in ice. This discovery really pushes the boundaries of what we know about water in the universe.
Something is happening on the red planet! Scientists believed that they knew nearly everything about its atmosphere, but a NASA rover has discovered something unexpected. There's more oxygen on Mars than they thought, and it behaves in weird ways. In the spring and summer, oxygen levels go up even more, and no one knows why. Now, you might think that when there's oxygen in an atmosphere, it's mostly because there's life somewhere around, like trees on Earth that produce oxygen through photosynthesis. But on Mars, it's not that simple. Non-living processes can also create oxygen, so we can't surely say that its presence means there's life on Mars. Mars has long been one of the main candidates when it comes to looking for signs of extraterrestrial life. Back in the 90s, scientists announced they had spotted potential proof there could be life on Mars because of microbes they had found in a meteorite that had arrived from the red planet. It looked like they had found fossils of bacteria. They actually stumbled upon tiny crystals of magnetite in the meteorite, which they believed could only have been produced by living organisms. It was such a mind-boggling discovery. People were excited, but many were also skeptical. It didn't prove there really was life on the red planet. Maybe there was life there a long time ago. The meteorite is thought to have originally formed on Mars billions of years ago, and to have landed on Earth thousands of years ago. Skeptics soon started to pick apart the evidence and eventually found some things that didn't make sense. For example, these magnetite crystals. No one could be sure how they formed. Why do they have to be bacteria? Some research has shown they could be the result of shock waves. Recently, the Perseverance rover has collected a couple of new rock samples from the Jezero crater on Mars. The theory says that about 3 billion years ago, before the red planet lost most of its atmosphere and basically just dried out, there was a big lake with a river flowing from it in that area. Whoa, what a great environment for life! Perseverance studied mud samples it had found on the bottom of the evaporated saltwater lake. Scientists were amazed to see a record number of sulfate molecules, something we usually find in mollusk shells on our home planet. Such organisms evolved a couple of 100 million years ago, but maybe there was a time when some of their space ancestors lived in water bodies on Mars. Mars has weaker gravity than Earth, which means these weird species could have got really big there, way bigger than their Earth cousins. Gravity plays a significant role when it comes to limiting the size of organisms. Bigger organisms need more energy to move against gravitational forces, but the creatures that may have lived there long ago are just a mix of hypothesis and our imagination, something that's still really hard to prove. Meet the Curiosity rover, another robot NASA is using to explore Mars. Curiosity has been in charge of measuring the composition of the atmosphere of the red planet for many years now. The rover has discovered that it mostly consists of carbon dioxide and a little bit of nitrogen and argon. The atmosphere of Mars has only 1/10 of 1% of oxygen, since, as far as we know at the moment, Mars doesn't have plants that could produce enough oxygen. But Curiosity has also discovered anomalies no one can really explain. It's found out that there are spikes in oxygen levels in the Gale crater during the Martian spring and summer. Every year, oxygen levels go up and down in unpredictable patterns there. What's even more interesting is that the oxygen spike is similar to a seasonal spike in methane, which is a gas we often associate with life on Earth. No wonder scientists are scratching their heads and wondering if there's a connection between the two gases, and if they both come from the same source on the Martian surface. Is there something big that breathes there? Come on, we'll be happy even with some small space worms in the soil. There's a type of salt called perchlorates in the Martian soil. Some scientists believe perchlorates might be responsible for the strange spikes in oxygen levels. But like with most things we know about space, it's just a theory. Also, scientists think that perchlorates breaking down in the Martian soil release oxygen too slowly to cause and explain the sudden increase in oxygen levels. One of the suspects is hydrogen peroxide, which is like water's unstable cousin. Hydrogen peroxide forms when sunlight breaks up carbon dioxide and water vapor in the Martian atmosphere. It can seep into the soil and stick to particles underground, which means it forms some kind of oxygen storage tank. Some data even show there are pockets of subsurface water in the Martian soil that may be hiding enough dissolved oxygen to actually support life. But even if the hydrogen peroxide could stay in the soil for millions of years, it would still only explain a small part of the increase in the level of oxygen. So you can't blame it for the whole thing. We can also take a look at an old experiment from the 1970s, where scientists found that moistening the Martian soil caused it to release a lot of oxygen. However, they did this experiment at a warmer temperature than the planet's average. And again, it doesn't explain how the oxygen spike keeps happening every year. None of the clues we have seems to fit the case. Mars may not have enough of its own oxygen, but it's possible to make this gas there. NASA conducted a small experiment where they tried and managed to produce oxygen on Mars. MOXIE is a device that can make oxygen on Mars. It managed to produce enough oxygen for an astronaut to breathe for 100 minutes. This awesome device worked in pretty tough conditions, at night or during the day, at extreme temperatures, and during the crazy dust storms the red planet is known for. Despite all this, MOXIE still kept up with producing high-purity oxygen. MOXIE is a clever device that can make oxygen on Mars by taking in carbon dioxide from the planet's atmosphere and heating it up to incredibly high temperatures. This allows the device to pull oxygen atoms from the carbon dioxide and produce breathable oxygen gas. If we want to use MOXIE to make enough oxygen for human missions to Mars, we need to make a bigger version of the device. But if we make it bigger, we might have trouble keeping it at the right temperature and making sure it heats up evenly without breaking. The ultimate goal would be to create an oxygen device that could continuously support a human mission for about 400 days. With a bigger version of MOXIE, we'd have enough oxygen to support crew members and even propel a return rocket to our home planet. When you see the dusty red surface of Mars, you can't say it's a place that hides liquid water underneath. Some say it's too cold for water to exist on Mars anyway. But there are stories that there could be a hidden world of liquid water, just like subglacial lakes in Antarctica. And to find out more, we might have to drill down about a mile beneath the surface. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But in the meantime, scientists have been using a spacecraft called Mars Express to study radar reflections around the southern pole of Mars. The reflections seem to indicate there could be liquid water, and the planet's interior might be keeping it warm. But some claim it might just be rock. We hope there are underground lakes on Mars because it would be a perfect spot to look for life. After all, scientists have found bacteria living in subglacial lakes on Earth. But we don't know for sure how deep they are, or if they're just small veins of water in the ice. Only time and more exploration will tell.
If you're scared of spiders, never ever visit Mars. In March 2025, NASA's Perseverance rover found something looking like a bunch of tiny spider eggs on the surface of the red planet. This something is made up of hundreds of little round balls stuck together. What if all these eggs hatch? Will hordes of 8-legged creatures swarm the red planet? Doubtful. The thing found by Perseverance was just sitting there on a hill called Witch Hazel, near the edge of Jezero Crater. On closer inspection, it turned out to be a weirdly shaped rock with a bit of Martian dust on it. Yeah, sadly, or luckily, those weren't Martian spider eggs. Even so, the formation really stood out from everything else around it. The Perseverance team named the weird rock St. Paul's Bay. It's what scientists call a float rock. This term means that it didn't form where it was found, but somehow got moved there. So, at the moment, we don't have enough clues to figure out its background and how it got that strange texture. But that's not the only mystery. Something had to move this rock from its original spot. One theory claims that the rock could have been created when a meteorite smashed into Mars. The powerful impact must have blasted rocks into the air, and those bits could have cooled down and formed the tiny balls we see now. If that's true, this rock might have come from really far away, and it could give us new info on how big impacts move stuff around on the red planet. NASA thinks the rock might have just rolled down Witch Hazel Hill. It could have come from one of the darker layers up on the hill. We have seen those layers from space. Now, the goal is to study Witch Hazel Hill more closely and find out if those layers are made of the same stuff as the St. Paul's Bay rock. If so, it might mean a few things. Maybe there was volcanic activity in that region, or a big meteor hit, or there might have been groundwater there in the past. If this theory turns out to be true, there's a chance that some of those rocks might hold tiny fossils from ancient microbes. That's why NASA is planning to bring some of the rocks back to Earth in the 2030s with the Mars Sample Return mission. We'll get to study them up close and maybe, just maybe, find signs of ancient Martian life. Now, the funniest thing about it all is that it isn't the first time scientists have dealt with arachnids on Mars. Spiders on Mars is actually the nickname for a weird-looking surface feature. In certain places on Mars, you can see big dark cracks that spread out like spider legs. Some are huge, over 3,000 feet wide. From above, they seriously look like a bunch of creepy crawlers moving across the planet. These spooky shapes were first spotted by Mars orbiters in 2003, and they've been showing up in satellite photos ever since. At first, no one had a clue what they were, but now, scientists think they form when carbon dioxide ice, dry ice, sitting on the surface, suddenly turns straight into gas. That fast change causes gas to shoot through the ice and carve out all those strange crackly patterns. An even cooler thing is that NASA scientists have been able to recreate those Mars spiders in the lab here on Earth. They built a special setup mimicking Mars's surface and watched tiny versions of the spiders form right in front of their eyes. The team had been trying to recreate those Mars spiders for 5 years. When it finally happened, they were overjoyed. Back in 2021, scientists managed to explain how those spider-like marks form on Mars using something called the Kiefer model. The basic idea is that in spring, sunlight shines through big, clear chunks of frozen carbon dioxide, aka dry ice. That heats the Martian ground underneath, and the ice starts turning straight into gas. The gas builds up under the ice, and when the pressure gets too intense, boom, the ice cracks. Gas shoots out, dragging dark sand and dust with it, leaving behind those spooky spider patterns once the ice melts in summer. The team tested this theory using a big special chamber nicknamed Dusty. Yeah, that's a real name. It's about the size of a barrel and can recreate the freezing cold, super low pressure conditions on Mars. We're talking about -301 degrees Fahrenheit. The researchers also put fake Martian soil in the chamber and covered it with CO2 ice. Then they used a lamp underneath the soil to heat it up, just like the sun heats up Mars. Their experiments worked, and little spider shapes formed just like they do on the red planet. The study also revealed something new. The team found that ice formed inside the ground too, and it caused the soil to crack along with the ice. This might explain why the spider's legs are so zigzagged instead of straight, like we might expect. Next, they want to keep doing experiments to figure out more about the Martian spiders, like why they only show up in some places on Mars and why they aren't getting more common over time. The red planet is apparently set on playing tricks on people from Earth. For example, In April 2023, NASA's Curiosity rover took a little break from searching for signs of ancient water on Mars and stumbled upon something curious: a travel book. Later, scientists realized that it wasn't really a book, just a rock. But it does look like a little hardcover with a page frozen mid-turn. This book rock is tiny, measuring only about 1 inch wide. So it might not hold any ancient Martian stories, but at least it's travel size. Then in January 2023, the University of Arizona shared another bizarre image: a rock formation that looked like the face of a giant teddy bear. It had two distinct beady eyes, a button nose, and an upturned mouth. It was captured by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which was orbiting the red planet at the time. Scientists from the University of Arizona explained that the teddy bear face was likely just a natural formation, like a broken-up hill or mound in the center of an ancient crater. Another cool find occurred in February 2022. The Curiosity rover spotted something that could only be described as a tiny flower made of minerals. It looks like little coral branches, but it's actually a mineral deposit, which is pretty rare to see in a flower-like shape. Most of these kinds of deposits are formed when ancient water mixes with rocks on the Martian surface, so they're not exactly new to scientists. But this one is unique, since it looks like a tiny plant or flower. Now, the next discovery is even wilder. Once, the Curiosity rover snapped a pic of what looked like a perfect doorway in a Martian cliff. Naturally, people started wondering if it was some kind of secret entrance, or maybe a hidden base for astronauts. But in reality, it's just a really cool rock formation. Winds and erosion carved away at the rock over time, creating a perfect symmetrical shape. Going even deeper into the past, back in 2018, a researcher noticed weird stick-like shapes in an image and thought they looked like fossilized animal footprints. Unfortunately, NASA quickly shot down the idea. Those tracks turned out to be salt deposits that formed in areas where water evaporated. You can find something similar on Earth too, for example, in dry lake beds. So, while it's pretty interesting that there's more proof that Mars used to have rivers and lakes, these tracks aren't evidence of life, just a quirky rock formation. Now, the next find is absolutely amazing. NASA's Opportunity rover found round, blueberry-like rocks on Mars back in 2004. But those aren't the kind you eat with your cereal. The blueberries you're looking at are made of iron, and they're evidence that Mars used to have a lot of water. Over billions of years, water smoothed them out and created these little balls. Scientists think that they formed when Mars was much wetter than it is now. The iron-rich blueberries are a pretty big deal because they show that Mars could have been a very different place a long time ago.
And we have liftoff of Mars Global Surveyor as America begins its journey back to the red planet.
There's a weird structure on Mars, a square, a near-perfect square standing alone in the endless red desert. And it looks too perfect, too precise to be anything but artificial. Nature's chaotic, and it rarely makes things look so deliberate. So the internet took one look at it and lost its mind, as the internet tends to do. The image spread like a virus on social media, igniting every conspiracy theory you can think of. Some were convinced it was proof that intelligent life had once tread upon the Martian sands. Well, let's dive in and sort it out. The image is real, and it's really old. The thing, not the picture. NASA's Mars Orbiter camera snapped it in 2001, capturing a tiny slice of Martian terrain, and there sat the square. Now, is that evidence for intelligent life? Well, Mars is an empty world now, a rust-colored desert. But once, long ago, it may have been something else entirely. A planet filled with roaring rivers, vast oceans, and thick clouds rolling across the sky. Now, in a world like that, life, if it ever had a chance, could have taken root. And there's a possibility it did. Scientists think that life could have existed on Mars in a short period from around 4.1 to 3 billion years ago. It could have started during the early era of Martian history, called the Noachian period, and lasted all the way to the late Hesperian period. Meanwhile, here on Earth, the first oceans were just forming. Life on our planet was just beginning, in the form of tiny bacteria in deep-sea hydrothermal vents. While Mars was already fully wet, on Earth, there were no plants or animals, just microscopic life trying to survive. So, Mars took the lead in the life game. It had a much thicker atmosphere, which could have trapped enough heat to keep water liquid. Valley networks, huge traces across the red landscape, show us the incredible story of rainfall, rivers, and lakes. Huge asteroids were still hitting Mars at the time, and they could have brought organic molecules with them. But if that's true, what happened, and where did life go? A recent NASA study suggests that the answer is more complicated than we thought. Astronomers believe that something drastic happened to Mars, like boom, and its cozy climate was gone, its atmosphere thinned. Without a strong magnetic field like Earth's to protect it, solar radiation stripped away the air, leaving Mars cold and dry. The ocean simply evaporated. Some of the water escaped into space while the rest froze underground or became locked in polar ice caps. Today, all that remains is a ghostly memory, dry channels and salty mineral deposits. But it looks like the transition wasn't sudden at all. It was slow and gradual. The planet was changing from wet and warm to cold and dry over millions of years. In fact, Mars kept its ocean even after the temperatures dropped to freezing. Some parts of Mars, especially the northern lowlands, might have remained wet for many, many centuries. Shouldn't the water freeze when it gets below 32 degrees Fahrenheit? Well, yeah. But there are many reasons why this miracle happened, like Mars's thick atmosphere and warm water traveling through currents. And during that time we mentioned before, from Noachian to the late Hesperian, life could have found a way. Microbes on Earth thrive in some of the harshest places, beneath Antarctic ice, in deep sea vents, in toxic volcanic lakes. Hey, life doesn't care. So these times in Martian history would be amazing for it. But don't be mistaken, Mars was never a paradise. Even during its cozy times, it wasn't as lush and green as we might imagine. In its early days, Mars was something more extreme, something closer to the young Earth. During the Noachian period, it was warm yet wet. Then, the climate shifted into the Hesperian period. Oceans were stretching across the northern lowlands. Temperatures dropped, and snow piled high, forming massive glaciers in the south, transforming the planet into an icy world. Finding microscopic life at that time is possible, but an intelligent civilization? That's less likely. The square that went viral isn't evidence for intelligent life yet, and here's why. First things first, people freak out because nature doesn't make straight lines. But that's not really true. Actually, nature does it all the time. For example, here on Earth, we have the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, a beautiful field of hexagonal basalt columns. These are completely natural. They're formed by volcanic activity. There's also the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Hey, remember it from the Close Encounters movie in the 80s? That's a symmetrical rock formation, and it was created by erosion. However, if we looked at these things from space, they'd look artificial. So, what is the square? How about a fracture pattern in the rock or some terrain that's broken apart along straight lines due to stress? This happens on Earth all the time when rock expands and contracts over time. And on Mars, the surface is just constantly battered by meteors, winds, and extreme temperature shifts. No wonder rock would get stressed. What happens here is another case of pareidolia. It's our brain's favorite thing, to spot patterns in something random. Hey, we evolved like this. So sometimes we might look at natural objects and see insane stuff. Faces on trees, animals and clouds, shapes, and so on. Besides, NASA has been photographing Mars for decades. We have high-resolution images of craters, mountains, valleys, riverbeds, everything. Wouldn't an ancient civilization leave us, well, something better than some square-like rock? Even though things erode over time, we'd find more signs, roads, foundations, artifacts, ruins, or at least something. Though, to be fair, we do see something. The square wouldn't be the first time Mars has played tricks on us. Over the years, we've spotted everything, from tunnels to carved faces, even Bigfoot. Or this doorway, for example, a perfectly cut rectangular opening. That's what people saw when NASA's Curiosity rover sent back an image of the East Cliffs on Mount Sharp. It's almost like an ancient passage leading deep into the surface. You just need to go in and find some fantastic underground base. Well, NASA decided to take a closer look at it. It turns out it's just 12 inches tall and 16 inches wide, the size of a dog door. That's because what we're looking at isn't a doorway, but an open fracture, a break in the rock that happens naturally over time. These kinds of cracks are extremely common, both on Earth and on Mars. They form when bedrock is stressed, expands, contracts, or gets eroded by wind and time. If you walk through a desert here on Earth, you'd see plenty of similar shapes. Canyons, cliffs, and even boulders have fractures that, from the right angle, might look like doorways. They're just not getting photographed by NASA. Also, the straightness of lines turns out to be just a trick of perspective. If you zoom out, you'll see that it's just one small break in a much bigger rock formation. Or the infamous Cydonia face. The photo was taken back in 1976 by NASA's Viking 1 orbiter when it was scanning Mars. In the region known as Cydonia, it captured what looked like a massive humanoid face, a rocky formation about 1.2 miles long. And this one face inspired books, documentaries, movies, and podcasts. But when NASA's Viking orbiters first took pictures of Cydonia, the cameras weren't super advanced. The image of the face had a low resolution and made the details fuzzy. NASA's later missions had far better cameras, and when Mars Global Surveyor revisited Cydonia in 2001, the truth was undeniable. The face was just a hill, a lumpy rock formation with ridges and depressions carved by wind and erosion. And in 2006, during another mission, a colored image with insanely high detail was made. No traces of face left there whatsoever. That's another pareidolia trick for you. Now, Mars has plenty of secrets left to uncover, but they will be related to its fascinating history, not some secret ancient civilization. The conclusion is, don't trust everything you see online. Sometimes a mysterious rock is just a rock. The year 2022 was rich in amazing discoveries. Let's have a look at the most impressive of them. The newest of NASA's rovers, Perseverance, keeps exploring the surface of the red planet. Right now, it's hunting for signs of ancient life in the Jezero crater. That's a 28-mile-wide impact crater. It was likely once filled with water. While trekking across the crater's floor, the rover spotted several surprising things. One of them was a weird purple coating on a few rocks. It was strangely similar to rock varnish formed by microbes on our planet. Scientists haven't figured out what it is yet. The rover has also been very successful in adding new samples to its rock collection. It's got 14 pieces of rock. They'll be stored on the surface of Mars for future missions to collect. NASA and the European Space Agency have been developing different plans for getting hold of these samples. Most of them involve a few spacecraft and even several helicopters. How about something more down to Earth? In June, a giant freshwater stingray was discovered in the Mekong River in Cambodia. A fisherman called Mao Tong accidentally snagged it while fishing. He called researchers, claiming the stingray was way larger than anything he had ever seen. The scientists arrived and found out that the creature measured 13 feet from snout to tail. It also weighed a staggering 660 pounds. This made it the largest freshwater fish that had ever been recorded. It was even certified by the Guinness World Records. Another animal-related discovery. Scientists have found evidence that spiders might see dreams. One scientist studying these creatures noticed that when snoozing, little arachnids jerked while dangling from a thread with their legs curled. It resembled the way cats and dogs twitch while dreaming. The researchers set up a whole lab to observe spiders. The resulting study revealed that jumping spiders indeed experienced a sleep-like state that included the rapid eye movement stage. And with 8 eyes, that's a lot of twitching. Researchers identified the remains of a 17th century Spanish galleon. It was found near Oregon's north coast. Experts think that those are the remains of Santo Cristo de Burgos. In 1693, this vessel was traveling from the Philippines to Mexico, but at one point it veered off its course and disappeared. The lost galleon was known as the Beeswax wreck. It got such a name because it was carrying blocks of beeswax. People had known about the ship for a long time, since parts of its cargo were often washed up on shore. But until recently, no one knew the name of the ship. But then researchers analyzed timbers discovered in a cave near Astoria. The analysis revealed that those were made from hardwood used to build ships in Asia in the 17th century, which meant the mysterious vessel was the perfect match for Santo Cristo de Burgos. Now, early in 2022, scientists noticed something alarming in West Antarctica. They already knew that the wedge of the continent sitting south of Argentina might raise the sea level by 10 feet. The thing is, our world is changing, and some of that ice is going to melt one day. But that's not the worst news. Experts spotted ominous hints that a massive collapse could occur really soon. A large ice shelf cracked suddenly. This ice shelf stops the ice sheet from slipping into the ocean and melting away. If this rupture widens, it might kick off a catastrophic chain reaction. Elsewhere, it was January when a submarine volcano, known as Hunga Tonga Hunga Hahapai in the Kingdom of Tonga, erupted. The event was unlike any other witnessed in recent decades. The blast was so powerful that it sent a pressure wave all over the globe, and it traveled around the world not once, but several times. It also produced giant tsunami waves. Scientists claim that everything about the eruption was extremely weird. For example, how insanely powerful it was, or the cascade of effects that followed. The eruption excavated more than 2 cubic miles of rock from the seafloor, becoming the largest volcanic blast in the past 100 years. It also unleashed tons of volcanic rubble and hot ash that moved along the seafloor for a whopping 50 miles. Also in January, scientists discovered a site in southeastern Australia with rocks that contained a breathtaking record of life. The fossils found at McGrath's Flat are estimated to be from 11 to 16 million years old. Those are soft-bodied small creatures, including spiders, and they're preserved in such extraordinary detail that you can even see the spider's leg hairs. The researchers also managed to spot tiny pores in fossilized leaves. Those pores used to take in carbon dioxide. Scientists discovered several new snail species while searching for animals in Southeast Asia, and they believe that 2 of these species are the smallest of all seen before. One of them lies in Vietnamese caves and is a mere 0.02 inches in length, which means if you decided to put them on a U.S. quarter, many hundreds would fit there. Now, I bet you heard of NASA's James Webb Telescope. It's a giant infrared instrument, and it's floating in space millions of miles away from our planet. It spent the first part of 2022 preparing to take its first images, and in July, the world finally saw those pictures. The images of the cosmos taken by the telescope are incredibly detailed. In fact, one picture was even called the deepest view of the universe ever. Among other pictures, there is a now iconic image of the Carina Nebula. Another one is a stunning view of Neptune's rings. At the moment, the telescope has a long list of observations it has to do. It's supposed to explore everything, from distant exoplanets to the oldest galaxies out there. Now, you probably know that 65 million years ago, give or take, life on planet Earth changed forever after a 6.5-mile wide asteroid crashed into our planet. This catastrophic event caused a mass extinction, which, in turn, led to 3/4 of all species, including dinos, disappearing from the face of the Earth. In February, scientists got exciting new information about the disaster. They studied some fish fossils and concluded that the asteroid had hit Earth during spring in the northern hemisphere. Another discovery was made in March. It turns out that right after the impact, rocks started to rain down more than 1,000 miles away from the impact site. And in August, scientists found something that could be a fragment of the asteroid off the coast of West Africa. It probably broke off and slammed into Earth separately, leaving an undersea crater. Now, brace yourself. Earlier this year, scientists grew brain cells in a lab and taught them to play video games. Yeah, I know, that's wild. Researchers from Australia claim they created the so-called mini-brains that could sense and respond to their environment. Each brain consisted of 800,000 cells. When viewing video games, they produced electrical activity. And even though they often missed the ball in a particular game, the connection rate was higher than a totally random chance. A research team funded by the National Geographic Society discovered a curious fossil in August 2022. It belongs to the oldest dinosaur found in Africa, this guy, whose name I can't pronounce. This ancient creature lived about 230 million years ago. It was one of the earliest ancestors of sauropods that we know about. This group includes such long-necked giants as the Brontosaurus. But unlike them, the dino we're talking about wasn't a giant. Scientists think it was probably a mere 2 feet tall at the hip. And some more great news. We now know for sure how to nudge asteroids off track. NASA made a spaceship known as DART crash into an asteroid. The main goal of this experiment was to check whether such a collision could change the course of the asteroid, knocking it off its orbit. This method could help us avoid a potentially catastrophic asteroid strike. The spacecraft, which cost $325 million and was the size of a vending machine, slammed into asteroid Dimorphos at a speed of 14,000 miles per hour. The spaceship burst into pieces right away. But the mission still seemed to be a success since Dimorphos was indeed affected by the collision to a measurable degree. So, maybe we won't need Bruce Willis and his gang after all.
When we think of Mars, we often imagine a barren wasteland, a place devoid of life and color. Just a big, lonely, rusty rock hurtling through space. For a long time, scientists believed that Mars was indeed a red planet. You see, Mars has a special talent. When it's far away from us, it appears as a tiny twinkling red dot in the night sky, like a glowing ember in a sea of stars. But as it gets closer to Earth, it becomes more visible, so its reddish hue becomes more apparent. This phenomenon has captured the imaginations of people throughout history, leading to countless speculations and myths about the nature of Mars. Astronomers, of course, noticed it too. They believed that the color was due to vast deserts covered in iron oxide, or rust. That's why we started calling Mars the Red Planet. When the space age started, NASA and other space agencies started sending missions to Mars. Early orbiter images also showed Mars with a reddish hue. This idea was further popularized by countless movies, books, and TV shows. They all showed us this dramatic picture of Mars as a desolate, harsh world with nothing but endless deserts and towering red cliffs. However, as technology advanced, we started sending orbiters, landers, and rovers on Mars. Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity, and many others. They all are our interplanetary detectives. Orbiters as Mars' all-seeing eyes in the sky. These spacecraft orbit around Mars and capture stunning images from high above. Like a cosmic paparazzi, they try to reveal all Mars' hidden secrets. But orbiters can only reveal so much. That's where landers and rovers come in. Mars ground explorers. These robotic adventurers hang around on Martian highways and byways. They try their best to study Martian rocks, soils, and atmosphere. And thanks to them, we finally found out the truth. Turns out, Mars is a world of contrasts and a rich palette. Imagine standing on the surface of Mars. Instead of a sea of monotonous red sands, you'll be greeted by a breathtaking tapestry of colors. As you look around, you might see sand dunes that resemble a scrumptious butterscotch dessert, with their warm caramel hues stretching across the landscape. You come across valleys and plains that glisten with a golden glow, as if Mars has hidden nuggets of precious metal just beneath its surface, waiting to be discovered by intrepid space prospectors. Moving on, you stumble upon areas with a brown and tan color palette that resembles a Martian safari, with shades reminiscent of the African savanna. All that's missing is some unique Martian wildlife. And in some regions, you might even catch a glimpse of a slight greenish hue that adds a touch of mystery to the landscape. These green colors indicate the presence of minerals on the planet. All these colors reveal Mars's exciting geologic history. They're the results of various minerals and chemical compounds. There are things such as olivine, sulfates, and clays that create this visual feast for the eyes. And, by the way, our idea of Mars as a boring desert is also a myth. Actually, its landscapes are shaped by ancient river channels, volcanoes, impact craters, and shifting sands. However, there's also some unpleasant addition to all these beauties. The thing is, humans have already managed to leave their mark on Mars, even though we haven't even visited it yet. Yep, we've already turned the red planet into a celestial landfill. But to be honest, it was inevitable. Imagine rovers and landers zipping across Mars, conducting scientific experiments. Of course, they would leave behind a trail of debris. Discarded spacecraft parts, deflated airbags, and other leftovers. Now the planet isn't really barren, is it? Well, at least it will become a treasure trove for archaeologists of the future. But it also serves as a cautionary tale. We need to remember to stay responsible during our space exploration. So, now we know that the real Mars is a vibrant world of surprises. But this isn't the only cosmic body in the solar system that turned out to be cooler than we thought. Remember Pluto? That guy who was once known as the 9th planet in our solar system? And now we consider it one of the dwarf planets. So the latest research has revealed to us very interesting things about this fella. Pluto is often depicted as a tiny, frozen world covered in ice, like a cosmic popsicle. But when the New Horizons spacecraft zoomed past Pluto in 2015, it revealed the true appearance of this planet. From a distance, Pluto appears to be a mix of reddish-brown and charcoal black, like it's wearing a stylish outfit for a formal cosmic event. But as you get closer, you'd start to notice a breathtaking array of colors. Imagine standing on a frozen plain that glistens like a diamond, with patches of crimson red that look like they were painted by a Martian artist with a flair for drama. Nearby, you might spot patches of charcoal black, giving the landscape a moody and mysterious vibe. As you continue your exploration, you might come across regions that are a stunning blend of orange, yellow, and white. And if that wasn't enough, you might also encounter icy mountains that shimmer with a hint of blue, creating an otherworldly glow that would leave you awestruck. Also, it turns out Pluto isn't just a simple frozen ball, but a dynamic world with beautiful mountains. Pluto's tallest mountain is called the Tenzing Montes, and it's about 20,000 feet tall, almost as big as Everest. It's like Pluto wanted to show off and prove it's not just a runt in the planetary neighborhood. The dwarf planet's surface is also dotted with vast icy plains that are as smooth as a skating rink. It's like Pluto is inviting us to strap on our ice skates and glide across its frozen surface. But the real kicker was when New Horizons discovered that Pluto has a heart-shaped region on its surface made of icy plains called Tomball Regio. Who knew this little planetary oddball could have so much love? Or let's take Saturn's moon Titan, for example. What we used to imagine about Titan was just the tip of the iceberg. This guy has also revealed itself to be a celestial wonderland. In the past, we thought Titan might be a barren and desolate moon, perhaps covered in a monotonous layer of rock and ice. But boy, were we wrong. Titan has turned out to be one of the most intriguing and diverse bodies in our solar system. First of all, forget about the dull grays and browns. Titan's surface is actually draped in a thick haze that creates an ethereal orange glow, like a mystical mist that adds an otherworldly touch to the landscape. Titan also has lakes, rivers, and even seas. But hold your horses, we're not talking about water here. This moon is too cold for liquid water to exist in its frigid atmosphere. Instead, its lakes and seas are filled with liquid hydrocarbons, like ethane and methane, which act as the main liquid on this moon. Imagine standing on the shores of a lake, looking out at the liquid methane gently lapping against the rocky coastline, with a hazy orange sky above. It's like a surreal blend of Earth and extraterrestrial worlds, all rolled into one. And finally, Jupiter, the largest planet in our solar system. It has often been depicted as a vibrant orange planet with swirling red and brown bands. However, in reality, Jupiter's atmosphere isn't orange. It's rather dominated by shades of red, orange, brown, and white. NASA's Juno mission has provided us with stunning images of this planet. In these photos, we can see cloud patterns, massive storms, and a complex system of belts on Jupiter. Turns out, it's more breathtaking and diverse than we had imagined. So there you have it, space explorers. Seems like our imaginations can be way off when it comes to the breathtaking beauty and diversity of the cosmos. So the next time you gaze up at the night sky and imagine what those distant worlds might look like, remember that reality can be even more astonishing than our wildest dreams.
This planet looks lifeless. Lifeless, brick red, and very, very dry, like a desert. But only until you reach one of the poles of the red planet. That's where you come across a seemingly endless ice cap. So if you've been imagining Mars as an extremely dry place, you might need to change your opinion. Scientists think there could have been a lot of water on Mars in the past. What makes them think so? They've found loads of ancient river valley networks and lake beds on the surface of the red planet. Plus, on Mars, there are minerals and rocks that could have only formed in liquid water. Mars might even have experienced terrible floods 3.5 billion years ago. These days, there's still some water on the red planet. It's true that Mars's atmosphere is too thin for this water to stay in its liquid form on the surface of the planet. But under the surface, it's a different matter. You can find water under the surface of the planet in its polar regions. The only place where this water is visible is at the North Polar ice cap. Also, sometimes, salty water flows down crater walls and hillsides, and there are tiny quantities of water in the planet's atmosphere, but it only exists as vapor. Anyway, now that we know for sure there is liquid water on Mars, could we probably use this water during a human-operated mission to the red planet? This way, the spaceship coming from Earth wouldn't have to bring its own water. It would make its cargo way, way lighter, which in turn would decrease the cost of the mission. The spaceship would just need to take enough water to get to the red planet and bring along the equipment astronauts will need to filter Martian water to make it drinkable. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The main problem is that the water found on Mars is salty. It might even be as salty as the oceans on our own planet. But these salts aren't what you can find on Earth. If a person consumed a certain amount of them, they would be highly toxic to the human body. On our planet, these salts are formed as byproducts of rocket fuel, as well as in road flares and fireworks. Naturally, they only occur in very dry areas. If there are no particular bacteria to break them down, these substances accumulate year after year, and their concentration in water is constantly increasing. But in theory, it's possible to purify even such water. The process of filtration could help the astronauts get rid of 90% of harmful substances. Then, they could use a UV disinfection unit. This would also help to get rid of any foreign microbes, if there are any, that might be hiding in the water. This stage would not only protect the astronauts, but also prevent them from bringing any dormant Martian microbes back to Earth. In other words, future travelers to Mars shouldn't have too many problems with drinking water on the red planet, but only if they bring the right purification equipment that can deal with any water quality. Because however bad running out of water in the middle of a desert is, experiencing it on another planet sounds much more terrifying. Now, I've got another question. If there is water on Mars, might there be other worlds in our solar system where we can find water? Sure, let's visit some of them. We'll start with Europa, one of the largest moons of Jupiter. Astronomers consider Europa one of the most promising places in the solar system to search for new life forms. All because this moon has a huge saltwater ocean with a depth of 40 to 100 miles. Yes, it is hidden under a layer of ice that is estimated to be from 10 to 20 miles thick. But it is still potentially habitable. Astronomers claim that plumes of water erupt from cracks in the ice shell and release the contents of the moon's ocean into space. There's also some evidence that the ocean might have warm water radiating from the moon's equator, which also means there could be not just life, but complex life on Europa. Well, I guess we'll find all about it in 2030 when NASA's Europa Clipper will reach the satellite and conduct its own investigation. And we're moving on to Enceladus, Saturn's moon. People have known about this tiny sleepy world since 1789. The diameter of the moon is a mere 310 miles, but despite its small size, it's one of the most intriguing places in our solar system because it too is likely to host a warm and salty liquid ocean. Watery eruptions happen on Enceladus rather regularly. The moon spews from its ice geysers more than 1,000 tons of water every hour. This water is mixed with organic molecules, salt, and other substances. Astronomers think that the ocean might be warm thanks to the tidal influence of Saturn. The planet's tug may cause hydrothermal activity, warming the oceans. There are also places in the solar system that might have water on their surface, but its presence hasn't been confirmed yet. For example, Ganymede, another moon of Jupiter. It's the largest moon in the solar system. It's even bigger than Mercury. Astronomers have long believed there is an ocean beneath the 100-mile thick ice crust covering the moon. And in 2015, Ganymede's auroral activity also hinted that this ocean could be warm and salty. Unlike on Europa, ice geyser activity on Ganymede hasn't been spotted yet. The reason might be a much greater distance between Jupiter and Ganymede than that between the gas giant and Europa. Also, there are the maybes. Those are worlds where there seems to be water, but we don't know to what extent it is liquid. One of such places is Callisto, which, have you guessed it, is another of Jupiter's moons. It's pretty far from its parent planet and also doesn't get as much radiation as other moons. Plus, it has a magnetic field, which definitely adds some protection. Astronomers claim there is water in this faraway world, but the moon's lack of geological activity might mean that it can't have an ocean without some kind of space antifreeze. In other words, all that water on Jupiter's satellite can be a huge, and I mean huge, chunk of ice. Now, let's visit another space body, but this time, it's not a moon, but a dwarf planet. Look, this is Ceres. Even though people have known about it since 1801, its small size made it difficult to study. Until not so long ago, this space body was considered to be a rocky world. But after the Dawn spacecraft arrived at Ceres in 2015 and examined the dwarf planet, a new theory appeared. Ceres might be less of a rocky ball and more of a watery planet covered with an icy mantle and a slushy ocean moving beneath. If it's true, Ceres could become the nearest to Earth world with an ocean. Titan is Saturn's largest moon. It has some of the most abundant pools of liquid in the solar system. Its surface is a slurry of water ice and ice made of lots of different compounds, for example, hydrocarbons. The satellite also has dense clouds that regularly burst with rain. And if you visited this place, you'd see rivers, lakes, and an ocean made up of methane and ethane hiding under the icy crust. Now let's talk about poor Pluto, which has changed its status a couple of times. When NASA's New Horizons flew by the dwarf planet in 2015, it discovered a hint of something totally unexpected: an ocean. Pluto is an icy world. But there are two things that make scientists think that Pluto might have once hosted an ocean. First, a theory that Pluto and its 5 moons could have been formed out of the same materials after a powerful collision. And second, the tidal forces between Pluto and its largest moon, Charon. Even better, this leaves open the possibility that the ocean is still around. We just need more time to examine the dwarf planet.
NASA made this cool rover called Curiosity and sent it to Mars to see what else we can find out about the red planet, the one that will possibly become our next home. Curiosity has been exploring the surface of Mars, taking measurements and gathering data about the planet for more than 10 years. And good old Curiosity stumbled upon some interesting wave-rippled rocks in the region of the Martian surface that was kind of expected to be drier. Scientists believe this area was actually a lake bed. It might be the bottom of a dried-up lake and all that sediment and other things that have accumulated there. All this can give us some important clues about the history of the lake. For instance, the types of organisms that might have lived there, how deep the lake was, how long it was there, and similar stuff. These wave-rippled patterns tell us that these rocks may have formed when strong Martian winds were moving the water in this big ancient lake. You know that specific sound you can hear when you're holding a seashell to your ear? You actually hear it because of the way the air gets trapped inside the shell and moves against its walls. The air cannot escape, so it vibrates at frequencies that depend on the size of the shell. In other words, you have a feeling you hear the sound of waves hitting a shore. That's Mars in my imagination now, a spot where you can still hear the long-lost sound of waves crashing against the shores of mysterious gigantic lakes. During its mission, Curiosity also came across a metallic object which turned out to be a meteorite. This unusual rock that came from space is made of nickel and iron. Its name is Cacao, and it's about the size of a small car, 6.5 feet long, and weighs over a ton. This is an important discovery because we don't often find metallic objects on the Martian surface. Most of the rocks there are made of basalt or some other volcanic materials, so that chunk of metal could tell us more about the history of Mars and how it formed. Plus, it definitely stands out. The surface of Mars is red from oxides, while Cacao is metallic-looking and dark gray. It's rounded and smooth, too, which means it once passed through Mars's atmosphere. There have been other robots exploring Mars, too. For instance, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, stumbled upon circular sand dunes. Sand dunes are usually very common on the red planet. They come in many different shapes and sizes, but circular ones like these are really rare. They consist of dark sand with light-colored material surrounding them. And the cool thing is that these dunes are arranged in a specific pattern, similar to the spokes of a wheel. It could be because of the way the winds blow. But back to our buddy, Curiosity. It's been exploring many other interesting things, like oxygen levels in the Martian atmosphere. The levels change depending on the season. There's more oxygen in the spring and summer. It's still not clear why, though, and of course, even that is not enough for us to really breathe there. The concentration of oxygen on Mars is 0.1%, which is about 100 times less than the concentration in Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere of Mars is mostly made up of carbon dioxide, with traces of other gases. Curiosity was so good that it also decided to analyze the age of rocks it found. It seems they're much older than we previously thought. Some of them date back more than 3 billion years. Curiosity found organic molecules in soil samples too. These molecules are basically building blocks of life. Now, this doesn't prove there's indeed life on Mars. It's just one of the things that suggests there might have been some form of life a long time ago. Curiosity discovered potential evidence that there might be a large reservoir of liquid water beneath the south polar ice cap, probably very salty and full of different minerals. This high salinity is the reason why this water could remain liquid at temperatures well below freezing. It would be cool to have some sort of subsurface ocean to take a dip in, especially when these crazy Martian winds are raging on the surface. And it would be great to have something that would protect us from those insane radiation levels on the red planet. There are some pretty toxic chemicals and salts in the Martian soil, which can be really bad for humans. Astronauts could potentially end up being exposed to these toxic chemicals, either through direct contact with the soil or by inhaling dust that contains these salts. Also, these substances could be a problem for growing crops. This is a really big discovery for long-term missions to Mars, because astronauts would need to be able to grow their own food so they can survive while there. Another thing that favors the idea of potential life on Mars is discovering methane there. Methane is a very important finding because usually living organisms produce this gas. So, where did it come from if not from them? In reality, there are a few possible explanations for that. One is the geological activity of underground reservoirs. Another idea is that meteorites brought methane to the red planet. What's interesting is that levels of methane are higher in particular areas. So, yeah, I don't know about you, but I'll stick to the theory that it comes from living organisms. Now, it's possible that volcanoes on Mars are still active. We know there are many extinct volcanoes on the red planet, but we've never found enough evidence to prove that some of them are still alive. Scientists studied volcanic deposits and found out that some volcanoes could have erupted maybe 50,000 years ago. Before that, everyone thought the last eruption happened 3 to 4 billion years ago. If you could compress the geological history of Mars into just one day, this would be like having an eruption a second ago. So, you never know. There might still be magma bubbling in secret under the Martian surface. All the future generations that might end up building their life there could really have some fun. Mars turned into a cold and barren place that can't really support life over time. And one of the main reasons for that was losing its atmosphere. The red planet used to have a much thicker atmosphere, similar to Earth's. One major reason for that is its relatively weak magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field helps protect our atmosphere from the solar wind, a stream of charged particles that comes from the sun. Without this protection, Mars had nothing to help it confront this insanely strong force that eventually took away most of its atmosphere. Another factor that played a big role in the loss of Mars's atmosphere is its relatively low gravity. Because Mars has weaker gravity than Earth, it's easier for gas molecules to escape into space. So Mars probably used to be more similar to our home planet. But with its current thin atmosphere, it can't keep any heat, which makes it very cold and very complicated for us to explore. But maybe it's better for us that we didn't visit the red planet back in its old times. There's this story about an ancient megaflood that might have happened there. So yes, the red planet probably used to be a wetter and more hospitable place than it is today, with beautiful flowing rivers and amazing lakes, ponds, and other bodies of water. And some research showed evidence of large channels carved into the planet's surface. These channels are way bigger than any we previously found on the planet. They suggest this megaflood happened billions of years ago. Perhaps it happened as a result of different factors, like volcanic activity, melting ice, and the release of carbon dioxide from the planet's crust. The flood may have created some temporary pools of water too. Hopefully, it will mean more interesting clues for finding traces of microbial life. How about that?
You take a rocket to the moon. It lands. You put on your work uniform and go to work your shift at a local factory that extracts water from beneath the surface of the moon. There's also fuel plants here. Dozens of people and rovers are roaming the expanse of Earth's natural satellite. When your shift ends, you board the rocket again. It takes you back home, just like a regular bus. That's exactly what NASA is planning to do. In the first stage of this project is the Prime 1 mission. Prime stands for Polar Resources Ice Mining Experiment. The mission starts in 2022. Let's follow it step by step. A booster rocket and second stage are assembled on the launch pad. Ignition. The rocket's engines begin to burn fuel, and we go up. Soon, the rocket reaches a speed of about 24,000 miles per hour. At that speed, you could travel the distance from New York to London in just 8 minutes. Once the booster uses up all its fuel, it undocks and makes a soft landing on Earth. The second stage with the payload capsule fires its engines a couple of seconds after the first stage undocks, so the rocket continues moving up. Once it reaches orbit, the payload capsule opens. It releases the lunar lander Nova-C. It's a cylindrical spacecraft, as long as a sedan and slightly wider than the height of the average person. It starts its engine and begins its journey. First, the lander makes a circle around Earth. This is a gravitational maneuver that helps it to gain speed without wasting too much fuel. Because the lunar lander is still in orbit, Earth's gravity affects it. The spacecraft looks as if it's falling, but not to the surface of our planet, along its orbital trajectory. After one lap around Earth, the lander adjusts its trajectory and heads for the moon. The distance it needs to cover is 238,600 miles. That's like 9.5 trips around Earth, or 93 trips across the United States from coast to coast. Modern spacecraft can cover this distance in as little as 9 hours. That's a bit more than a journey from New York to Los Angeles by plane. At the same time, it took the first astronauts about 72 hours to get to the moon. Soon, Nova-C is near its destination. It makes another circle around the moon while it descends. Scientists have already chosen the perfect plane for it to land. There are several requirements. First of all, there should be signs that there might be ice under the surface in this location. Second, the lunar module should be able to maintain radio communication with Earth. And this is impossible if the lander is on the far side of the moon. When the first astronauts flew around Earth's natural satellite, contact with them was lost for a few minutes. The connection only resumed when their spacecraft came out of the lunar shadow. And the last requirement for the landing area is sunlight. The lander has solar panels to power its scientific equipment, onboard computers, and communication modules, so it needs direct sunlight. The lander is getting closer to the surface of the moon. The spacecraft is slowing down as it approaches the landing site. Now, it's almost hovering in midair. A few more seconds, and touchdown! The spacecraft makes a soft landing. It's time to drill through the surface. For this, the lander has a device called the regolith, an ice drill for exploring new terrain. To put it simply, it's a large, 3-foot-long drill. That's almost as long as a grown-up person's leg. Once the right spot is chosen, the device gets lowered into the lunar soil. Drilling will have several stages. Lander will have to lift the drill several times to get the soil out of the drill hole. Otherwise, it may damage the drill bit. Next, the lander will have to analyze the soil composition. To do this, it carries a mass spectrometer, observing lunar operations. Shortly, M-SOLO. Its work is based on a simple principle. It ionizes or charges particles of soil, making them move. Then it creates a strong magnetic field, which affects the charged particles, making them change their trajectory. Different substances, their molecules, and atoms move differently in the magnetic field. So, by analyzing the changes in their trajectories, we can identify the mass and charge of each particle. All we need to do next is look at Mendeleev's periodic table and see which atoms we can find in the samples. Scientists hope to find H2O, water. The south pole of the moon is an ideal place to keep ice within reach of our drill. The equator would be a great place to maintain radio contact and power the solar panels of the lander, but this area is likely to be too hot to have any ice. The lander will also carry a lunar hopper. This thing will be used to explore the surface of the moon. It will carry a load of about 2 pounds. Scientists will also test 4G communication technology. The lander should have some special modules for this. If the test is successful, people might be able to use cellular coverage for communication on the moon, like we do on Earth. But the main goal of the mission is to prove that the resources found on the moon can be used in the future. As early as 2023, NASA plans to send an autonomous rover called Viper, which stands for the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, to the moon. It'll land at the moon's south pole for the same reasons: the connection with Earth and sunlight. The rover itself will be about the size of a golf cart. It'll carry a drill and soil analyzer. Scientists have already laid out a route for the rover. It's about 10 to 15 miles long. It'll take Viper 100 days to travel along that route. It'll drill the soil in search of lunar ice and mark its findings on the map. It will be necessary to prepare for astronauts' arrival to the moon. It'll also help to provide them with valuable resources, like water. Later in the 20s, NASA will launch the Artemis mission. For this purpose, scientists have been constructing the Orion spacecraft for decades. It can carry 6 astronauts. The launch vehicle that will take Orion into orbit is called the Space Launch System. When ready, it'll be the most powerful rocket in human history. The first flight will be uncrewed. It's scheduled for 2022. Like the lunar lander, the spaceship will ascend into orbit, make one revolution around our planet, and go to the moon. Once it reaches the satellite, it'll stay in orbit for 6 days and then return to Earth. It'll spend a total of 25 days in outer space. The second mission is planned for September 2023. This time, we'll send 4 astronauts to the moon. They will fly around Earth's natural satellite and return without landing on the lunar surface. This will be the first crewed mission to the moon since 1972. The third mission, Artemis 3, is scheduled for the 55th anniversary of the first lunar landing in 2024. 4 astronauts will travel to the moon's orbit. Once there, 2 of them will move to the Starship HLS. This is a new lunar lander designed by SpaceX. Then they will make a soft landing on the moon's surface. The astronauts will spend several days there. Then the lander will fly back into orbit, dock with Orion, and return to Earth. There's also plans to build a space station in lunar orbit, the Lunar Orbitable Platform Gateway. It'll be almost like the International Space Station. It'll be assembled from a lot of modules, just like the ISS. There will be a power and propulsion element. This is going to be the first module equipped with engines for maneuvering and propulsion. There will also be solar panels that will power the station. One more module will serve several purposes, including communication and refueling. Then, there will be several living modules. They will be able to host several astronauts for a period of up to 90 days. That's where they will eat, sleep, train, and conduct scientific experiments. The station will be equipped with a robotic arm. It'll help spacecraft dock with the station, as well as install additional scientific equipment outside the station. There will be an airlock module. Incoming spacecraft will be able to dock with the station there. It'll be like a parking lot for dropping off and picking up passengers. Astronauts will be able to use it as a door to outer space. There will be a sample return vehicle, a small spacecraft that will deliver samples of lunar soil to the station. It'll be fully robotic. The gateway will be much smaller than the ISS. For comparison, the near-Earth station now consists of 11 modules, and its total cost is about $150 billion. In the future, we'll use this station as a launch pad to send spaceships to other planets, like Mars or into deep space. Rockets launched from the ISS will need much less fuel because they won't have to fight Earth's gravity. But the astronauts on the Gateway will be in more danger than on the ISS because of radiation. Earth's magnetic field acts as a shield that disperses the sun's harmful rays. And astronauts staying there don't get much more radiation than the passengers of a commercial airplane on Earth. The moon is too far from our planet's magnetic field, so all the modules of the Gateway station will have to be additionally protected from solar radiation.
Have we found another civilization? Is that a door to someone's home on another planet? Can we peek through the windows? After all, it was NASA's Curiosity rover that sent this image to Earth, And right now, this rover is exploring the surface of Mars. Unfortunately, astronomers were fast to disappoint us. They claimed that it was just a natural part of the Martian landscape. There are several clues that made them think it wasn't a real door. For example, it's tiny, a mere 3 feet high. But it might simply mean the Martians aren't that tall, you may object. But scientists keep insisting that what looks like a door is actually an opening in a rock created by natural forces, like winds and erosion. The thing is, if you look at the rock attentively, you may notice strata, the layers of silt that stand out because they're harder than the surrounding material. These strata dip here on the left and a bit higher on the right. They likely appeared around 4 billion years ago in a river or a wind-blown dune. Since the strata became visible, powerful Martian winds have eroded them even more, and now you can see that they disappear inside the door. And look at this. See those cracks? Yeah, those. That's how rocks weather on the red planet. This small cave probably formed when several fractures crossed the strata. A pretty large boulder might have fallen out under its own weight, and this created the door-shaped opening. Now, this theory is quite plausible, because even though the gravity on Mars isn't as strong as on Earth, it's still strong enough to do it. Besides, see that rock to the right of the opening? It has a suspiciously smooth vertical edge. It must be the culprit. It probably fell out not so long ago, and Martian winds haven't got rid of it yet. And winds on Mars can be exceptionally powerful. This planet is infamous for its intense dust storms. Sometimes they kick up so much dust that you can see it through a telescope on Earth. Such storms occur every year and cover continent-sized areas. They also last for weeks at a time. But besides these annual storms, there are even larger storms that happen much more rarely, but they're more powerful and way more intense. Those are called global dust storms because they encircle the entire planet. But even if you got caught in the most severe storm on Mars, it wouldn't be as terrible as you might think. The wind speed on the worst Martian storms reaches 60 miles an hour tops. Hurricane-force winds on our planet can be twice that speed. You should also keep in mind that the atmosphere on the red planet is 1% as dense as the atmosphere on Earth. That's why, if you decided to fly a kite on Mars, you'd need the wind to be much faster than on Earth. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be able to get the kite in the air. In other words, even though it's quite windy on Mars, it doesn't feel as intense as on our home planet. Oh, by the way, you might have noticed I keep calling Mars the red planet. Why? Look, our neighbor is covered in dust, soil, and rock that is rich in iron oxide. That's what gives the surface of the planet its trademark red hue. And look, there's the trademark. Nah, just kidding. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun. Not so far away from the star, you might say, and still, it's a cold and deserted world. The average temperature on its surface is minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you ever visit one of its poles during the wintertime, bring a lot of warm clothing, because the temperatures are likely to drop to minus 220 degrees there. In the summer, though, you might feel very comfortable in some regions. There, the temperatures can rise to 70 degrees, not very different from what we're used to. Mars is one of the most explored space bodies in the solar system. At the moment, NASA has 2 rovers roaming the red landscapes, Curiosity and Perseverance. There's also one lander called InSight and helicopter Ingenuity nicknamed Ginny. Perseverance is the most advanced and largest rover ever sent to another world. The journey to the red planet took 203 days, and Ginny traveled to Mars attached to the belly of Perseverance. Sounds cozy. And now, I'm going to tell you something really curious. Let's say you're a Babylonian who lived around 5,000 years ago. Babylonia was an empire in ancient Mesopotamia. Just think back to 6th grade. Anyway, your neighbor comes up to you and says, "What day is it today?" And what do you answer? "It's Mars Day." Wait, what? When the ancient Babylonians created the week, they decided to divide it into 7 parts. Each day got named after some space body, like the Moon, the Sun, Venus, and so on. Mars Day was on Tuesday. The Babylonians believed that each of these space objects influenced their lives on the day named after it. And since Mars was red in color, they associated it with aggression. That's why on Tuesdays, they had special ceremonies to avoid the influence of the unfriendly planet. Indeed, Mars might seem unfriendly to a tired traveler. Its atmosphere is very thin. Its volume is a near 1% of the atmosphere on Earth. In other words, there's 99% less air to breathe on the red planet. Mars's atmosphere is mostly made up of carbon dioxide. At such high concentrations, it's toxic for us humans. And if you were looking for some oxygen to breathe on Mars, you'd come away empty-handed. There's only 0.1% of oxygen in the air on the red planet. That's definitely not enough for you to survive there. At the moment, Mars has 2 moons, Deimos and Phobos. Astronomers think they may be asteroids once caught in the gravitational field of the planet. The moons are shaped like potatoes. That's because their mass is too little for gravity to give them a spherical form. Potatoes, eh? Maybe they should be renamed mashed and au gratin. One day, Mars will get a ring of its own. It might happen in the next 20 to 40 million years. Will Brightside be there? Stay tuned. Mars's gravitational forces will tear apart the planet's largest moon, Phobos. Hey, it really will get mashed. Some chunks of the former moon will crash into Mars, and others will break apart and create the ring around the planet. This ring might exist for at least 100 million years. The surface of Mars is cut by a huge canyon system known as Valles Marineris. Sounds like a pasta sauce. If it were on Earth, it'd stretch all the way from New York to California, over 3,000 miles. At its widest part, the largest canyon on Mars is 200 miles, and it reaches 4 miles at its deepest point. If you still have difficulties imagining the sheer size of this natural phenomenon, here you go. Valles Marineris is 10 times the size of the Grand Canyon on Earth. Now, since we're on the subject of gigantic things, let's talk about Olympus Mons. This is the largest volcano in the solar system, and it's on Mars too. It's 3 times as tall as Mount Everest on our planet, and that's the tallest mountain above sea level. And the base of Olympus Mons is as large as the state of New Mexico. Now, scientists think there could have been water on Mars in the past. What made them think so? They found lots of ancient river valley networks and lake beds on the surface of the red planet. Plus, on Mars, there are minerals and rocks that could only form in liquid water. Mars might even have experienced terrible floods 3.5 billion years ago. These days, there's still some water on the red planet, but Mars's atmosphere is too thin for this water to stay in its liquid form on the surface. Now, it only exists in the form of water ice. You can find it just under the surface of the planet in its polar regions. The only place where this water is visible is at the North Polar Ice Cap. Also, sometimes, salty water flows down crater walls and hillsides, and there are tiny quantities of water in the planet's atmosphere, but it only exists as vapor. So, as a vacation spot, I think I'll pass. Mars is a dry, rocky, and barren planet. It's difficult to imagine that once upon a time, the red planet could have had a landscape similar to ours. But scientists believe that this is the case and that millions of years ago, Mars was filled with vast oceans of water. In early 2021, NASA sent their most advanced rover yet to the red planet. Its mission is to search for any signs of microbial life that hint at the planet's past. They named the rover Perseverance, or Percy for short. Even Percy's initial landing on Mars itself was a scientific discovery. The rover landed using auto-navigation along with onboard cameras to track the planet's surface and find the ideal spot to land. This helped scientists work out the best landing options for future missions to Mars. Percy currently roams the red planet, guided by a new and highly advanced auto-navigational system. The majority of his day is spent analyzing rock formations. Percy is decked out with a high-tech laser that fires a tiny pinpoint beam into rocks. The laser creates a plasma from the rock samples. Then Percy's onboard spectrograph analyzes the plasma to identify the chemical composition of the rock. 2 of Percy's most significant findings so far are rocks that have been nicknamed Mazi and Yigo. These words come from the Navajo dialect, in tribute to a NASA engineer from the Native American Navajo tribe. Mazi means Mars, and Yigo means diligent. These 2 rocks are both salt-like in composition, meaning they are igneous rocks. If you're not familiar with your rock species, igneous means that the rocks were formed from a volcanic eruption. The current shape of Mazi and Yigo suggests that they have been molded by a watery environment. This could be proof that Mars was once filled with water. Another interesting rock discovered has been nicknamed the harbor seal. This is a dark, smooth rock that scientists believe had been sculpted by powerful northwesterly winds to resemble the playful marine animal. For decades, scientists have theorized about the wind and weather patterns on Mars. This finding seems to support their existing weather modeling of the planet. Percy has sent back over 20,000 images since arriving on Mars in February, including an internet-breaking selfie. Audio files have also been sent from the Mars mission. For the first time ever, we can listen in to the eerily and ambient sounds of extraterrestrial winds on the Martian landscape, all thanks to the rover's onboard microphones. For the first time ever, oxygen has been produced using human technology on another planet. Inside Percy is a gold-plated box around the same size as a car battery. This is the MOXIE unit. MOXIE stands for Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. Yeah, that's a bit of a mouthful. 95% of Mars' atmosphere consists of carbon dioxide. The MOXIE unit diffuses the carbon dioxide and, through an intricate chemical process, turns it into oxygen. The unit has produced a modest but still historic 5 grams of oxygen. This works out to around 10 minutes of breathable air. It's also a good sign for what could come in the future. Who knows? Maybe one day MOXIE can produce enough oxygen to support a human colony on Mars. For now, scientists are more focused on MOXIE producing enough oxygen to create rocket fuel. In order to propel the standard-sized modern-day spacecraft off of Mars, you would need 7 metric tons of rocket fuel and 25 metric tons of oxygen. This would be far too heavy for a spacecraft to bring from Earth. So if there is ever to be a manned mission to and from Mars, there needs to be some way to create fuel on the planet. For those of you worried about Percy being lonely, he actually has a special companion up there with him. Stowed inside the rover on his descent to Mars was a small but expensive helicopter named Ingenuity, but you can call her Ginny for short. The mini-helicopter cost NASA $80 million to develop, but every penny was worth it as Ginny made history by performing the first powered drone flight on another world. Ginny was a massive scientific feat, as engineers originally struggled to design a helicopter dinky enough to be stowed on an interplanetary rover, but powerful enough to take flight on another planet. After the success of Ginny, scientists are now collecting data from the one-of-a-kind helicopter to aid in the design of smart micro-drones here on Earth. The helicopter is used to explore terrain that is unsuitable for the rover. Ginny hovers over the Martian landscape, collecting data and taking aerial photographs to send back to Earth. Ginny is powered by solar panels above the rotor blades. A big concern for scientists was that the panels would get covered in thick coatings of Martian dust and leave the helicopter powerless. Luckily, airflow from the blades actually self-cleans Ginny's solar panels. Inside her mechanisms, Ginny carries a small postage stamp-sized piece of fabric from the Wright brothers' historic 1903 flying airplane. This is a loving tribute to the original pioneers of aviation. The Curiosity rover first landed on Mars back in 2012 and has been roaming the red planet for over 12 years. Curiosity wasn't designed to detect life as Perseverance was, but instead to determine if Mars had any of the necessary elements that could sustain life. This includes things such as liquid water, carbon, energy sources. Curiosity found a site scientists called Yellowknife Bay. This site once contained an ancient lake. The rover discovered minerals left behind from the waters, showing that the lake water was not too acidic or too salty. It would have had a balanced pH. Carbon, nitrogen, and other elements that could potentially support life were all found within the crater of the ancient lake. And most important of all, Curiosity found potential sources of energy for microbial life. So maybe there could be existing life on Mars after all. Curiosity made history by being the first Mars rover to witness and measure a planetary-wide dust storm. Just like on Earth, wind constantly blows on Mars, grinding away at the geology. This creates lots of dust, which eventually gets whipped up into large clouds. The dust clouds absorb sunlight and heat up, making the winds more intense. Without any rain or oceans, every few years the clouds grow so large that they wrap around the entire planet and create a giant dust storm. In 2018, Curiosity witnessed one of these great storms from the Martian surface. It noted that sunlight on the planet decreased by 97%, and many large sand dunes were left behind. Curiosity has spent more than a decade measuring the radiation environment on Mars. This allows scientists to work out if humans could safely visit the red planet without turning radioactive. So far, the news is encouraging, and the Mars radiation levels are comparable to those experienced by astronauts aboard the International Space Station. This means that astronauts could endure a long-term round trip without having to worry about radiation too much. Mars is home to the largest volcano in the solar system, Olympus Mons. This giant volcano is 14 miles high. That's about 2.5 times the size of Mount Everest. The volcano was formed millions of years ago, a time when Mars was filled with countless volcanoes, spewing molten lava across the planet's surface. Olympus Mons is a shield volcano, so rather than violently spewing lava and flames up into the air, lava would flow slowly down the sides of the volcano. This gives it its low, squat appearance and an average slope of only 5%. At only a few million years old, Olympus Mons is still a fairly young volcano. Because of this, scientists believe that it could potentially still be active, so maybe it could erupt at some point in the future. The Curiosity rover doesn't just eye up the local geology, it also takes a note of what's happening in the sky. In March 2021, it captured these shimmering iridescent colors in the sky, named mother-of-pearl clouds. This colorful display occurs when all the cloud particles are nearly identical in size. It usually happens shortly after the clouds have formed.
The Grand Canyon in Arizona is bigger than the state of Rhode Island. You could even fit the whole of Manhattan in there. It's so massive, it kind of has its own weather. But the Grand Canyon isn't the only big crack out there. The Valles Marineris is bigger, way bigger. It's on Mars, and it goes nearly a quarter of the way round the planet. It's 10 times as long as the Grand Canyon, and it's so deep, you could parachute into it. The Kesai Vallis is also on Mars. It's made up of a series of canyons, and it might be the ancient home of a massive Mars flood. There are huge canals and canyons all over the red planet. There's Tiu Vallis. That's where researchers think there was an epic battle between ancient Martian water and boiling hot volcanic lava. Guess we know who won that one. Equally impressive is Ares Vallis. It's the longest known drainage system around. It might be weird to think of Mars as having huge waterways, rivers, and floodplains, but in its early days, Mars might have had a warm and wet climate. Now it's just dried up canyons as far as the eye can see. The Ithaca Chasma looks like a giant scar on Saturn's moon Tethys. It's 4 times longer than the Grand Canyon and about 3 times as deep, and it's billions of years old. No one's been kayaking there yet. We've only seen a photo of it, thanks to the spacecraft Voyager 1. Mercury's Great Valley makes the Grand Canyon look like a tiny pothole. NASA's Messenger spacecraft was the first to snap some photos of this massive formation. The valley's surrounded by 2 giant somethings, the Enterprise and Belgica, whatever that means. Pluto's largest moon, Charon, has a canyon named Argo Chasma, and it's huge. Even though Pluto's not called a planet anymore, it can still brag about its huge canyon. Even right here on Earth, the Grand Canyon has some serious rivals. Yarlung Tsangpo Canyon is the deepest canyon on Earth. It's in the Himalayas, in Tibet. Some people call it the Everest of canyons. You could fit a 2,000-story building in it. The Indus River Gorge is big and gnarly. It's in Pakistan, and you could stack 3 football fields inside it. The Indus River, one of the largest rivers in Asia, passes through it, and it's even home to baleen whales and porpoises. The Colca Canyon in Peru is a short but insanely bumpy bus ride away from Machu Picchu. It's the massive home for the largest flying bird in the world, the Andean condor. It has a wingspan of 10 feet. In Nepal, where the Himalayas are, is the spectacular Kali Gandaki Gorge. No one knows exactly how far down it goes, but it's probably around 5 times as deep as the Grand Canyon. It's got it all: crazy terrain, thin air, and it's in the middle of nowhere. So beware, only experienced hikers should dare go in. The Copper Canyon in northern Mexico is home to a world-famous group of people who run marathons, or even double marathons, just for fun. There are 6 canyons all joined together, and in its widest part are 2 of Mexico's tallest waterfalls. Copper Canyon also has one of the longest zip lines in the world, and one of the scariest train rides you'll ever take. Don't look down. Even in the US, there's a lesser-known canyon that's deeper than the Grand Canyon. It's Hell's Canyon. And it's sort of on the border between Oregon and Idaho. It was carved out by the Snake River. Hell's Canyon is home to the Seven Devils mountain range. The Kings Canyon is in the Yosemite National Park area. It's about 1.5 times as deep as the Grand Canyon. Nearby is the second largest tree on Earth, General Grant. The largest canyon in Australia is the Capertee Canyon, and you can get paid to go there. Sort of. A few lucky cyclists and campers over the years have found gemstones on the banks of the Capertee River. If you're lucky, you'll also see some 2,000-year-old rock art. The Tiger Leaping Gorge is right out of a fairy tale, but it's very real, very deep, and pretty scary. The legend says that a tiger was being chased, and it leapt over the river at the bottom of the gorge, with a little help from a perfectly placed rock right in the middle of the river. The Great Rift Valley is 15 times longer than the Grand Canyon. So what, that's like 1 trillion miles long? It goes through 2 continents and is home to about 30 lakes. It's even visible from outer space. So if you're ever floating out there in the cosmos, keep an eye out for it. The Cotahuasi Canyon is deep, very deep. It has extreme rafting, kayaking, and hiking. And apparently the mosquitoes are pretty extreme too. There's one canyon in Tibet that I'm pretty sure holds a world record. Try looking up the Polong Tsangpo Canyon. No images pop up. It's 2021, that's insane. What's down there? Yeah, probably just a river and stuff. Colombia's Chicamocha Canyon is pretty much as deep as the Grand Canyon. Extreme sports own this place. Ziplining, canoeing, paragliding. Heck, even their cable car is extreme. It's a 25-minute ride, and it's steep. Under Greenland is the Greenland Grand Canyon, and it goes for hundreds and hundreds of miles. Water from melting icebergs runs through the canyon. It was actually NASA who discovered it. There's an absolutely massive canyon in Antarctica. The only problem? You can't see it. But apparently, it's freezing cold and mostly white. The sea has some mighty canyons too. The Jemchug Canyon is one of the biggest underwater canyons. It's right off the coast of Alaska, and it's home to seals, dolphins, and whales. The deepest underwater canyon is about 6 times as deep as the Grand Canyon. It's the famous Mariana Trench. Make it to the bottom, and you'll break the world record for deepest dive ever. The Grand Bahama Canyon is another underwater marvel. You could just keep dropping Empire State Buildings in there, and you'd never see them on the surface. Monterey Bay is pretty laid back, but its canyon is anything but. There's lanternfish, squid, sea turtles, rockfish, and sea otters all hanging out together. Oh, and thousands of jellyfish, so take care not to get stung too much. There's also giant kelp around there, a seaweed that can grow up to 100 feet long. The Hudson Canyon runs from the New York Harbor right into the sea, and it's gross. Sure, it has deep sea coral and sponge formations, but it also has a whole bunch of trash and sewagey sludge coating the bottom. The Aviles Canyon is off the coast of Spain. It's one of the deepest underwater canyons in the world, and it's one of the few places where giant squid live. It's famous for its white coral and the fact that it's insanely cold. Bremer Canyon in Australia is underwater, massive, and dangerous, especially if you're a giant squid. That's the favorite snack of the local orca, the huge whale with a monster appetite. Bremer Canyon's a major tourist destination these days, especially for those looking to snap a pic of the more than 100 orcas that call it home. The Nazare Canyon is near Portugal. It's the largest submarine canyon in Europe, and it's around 3 miles deep. That's 6 of the world's tallest buildings. It forms high breaking waves, so it's become a haven for big wave surfers. The Canadian Arctic Rift System is huge. It goes all the way from the Labrador Sea to the Arctic Archipelago, and it connects the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. So, picture this. Greenland used to be smashed up against Canada some millions of years ago. Thanks to this rift system, Greenland's been slowly drifting away. Think how huge Canada would be if you added Greenland onto it.